This is good. What a hectic day this is good. I just sent the weekly email out so everyone has it.
I saw it, and that's where I got the link from. That was helpful.
I send it every week on Monday, so if people lose it, they can always get that.
Yep. Where is everyone tonight?
I have no idea. Scott, I think Scott's on his way back.
Oh, Arlene's coming in. That's good.
Well, Scott's been so helpful with these weekly emails, I gotta tell you. So.
Oh, good.
This is the best email of any synagogue I've ever seen, actually. I used to think that we were negligent in not having one like John Hausman's, but I never get his anymore to even see it. But it's mostly advertising for people to get stuff at the synagogue gift shop or script. But,
oh, okay. They do the gift card thing?
Yeah. They have like 10 different things. So. But Arlene, welcome. Thank you for the pamphlet. It's so wonderful to have it available to people. I think I'm going to give it to people tomorrow in Westport. Arlene, I think I'm going to bring some to Westport tomorrow.
That'd be nice.
Some of my friends, if I see them tomorrow. It depends how much time I have after the funeral and the shiva. Yeah.
Rabbi, are you at liberty to say what happened to Karen?
She died from leukemia.
It didn't. I figured it might have been MS or leukemia.
Yeah,
they didn't say, so I wasn't sure.
Well, she was private about it, so we never said. You never heard us say Mishabera. The people who said it privately in their hearts, so we didn't know. So honestly,
how long did she have it?
3 months.
Wow.
Well, she swore people to secrecy, Arlene. Unfortunately, no.
Yep.
So.
Well,
it's everyone's choice, Arlene. Everyone has their
Yep.
choice what to do with their life, you know. But it's hard that I can't say goodbye because I didn't know I couldn't. I mean, how was I knew something was up when I didn't see her around for 3 months, but I didn't
Yeah,
know the answer.
that's awfully quick, isn't it?
Yeah.
If she didn't do any, if she chose not to do any treatment, you know?
You know what? She thought, in all fairness to her, she thought that she was going to beat this thing. And it was, leukemia, people don't die that much from leukemia.
Right.
I think she thought, Arlene, that she was going to beat this. And it's like when I was sick. I don't like to talk much about it. You know what?
Right.
You figure you're going to get better, and that's it. Unfortunately, she didn't get better from it.
Yeah, it's funny, and I agree with you. And I have very mixed emotions about putting my name in for Misha Bayrak. I really believe in it. I really believe in it, so I want to, but I'm uncomfortable doing it, and I shouldn't be.
Oh, I am too. How do you think I feel when I was sick? I'm uncomfortable too, people praying for me. So, but I believe it helped me, Arlene. I believe it helped me when I told all my friends to do it.
See,
Family. You know what? I believe you have to have the name. Didn't I just give a class about the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, if you don't have a name, God can't really help unless you know, unless you express the name to the universe, who it is. You can't just mumble it in your heart.
And that's how I feel, Rabbi.
Mhm.
Like maybe if we'd all prayed, she could have had more time or more time without. Who knows? You're right. I mean, it's definitely.
We're not going to know.
I
now,
respect
Arlene.
that.
We're not going to know. We're not going to know now.
Nope.
I just can't believe it was kept quiet like that.
Yeah.
Arlene and Marcy, you know what? But when I'm sick, when other people are sick, if it's not that serious of a thing in your mind, you think I'll get over it. I don't have to tell anyone.
Right.
When I get over, I'll be back. So she did send a letter to the board of directors resigning, knowing that she couldn't function, and that resigned. So people on the board knew that she was sick, but I don't know how sick they knew, but whatever.
How long ago did she resign?
I have no idea.
So you didn't even know?
No one told me about it. No. I'm sending her reports, my report every month, as if she's on the board.
Yeah. I've said it more than once, Rabbi. With all due respect, this is a strange synagogue.
Yeah, it is.
You would think if they would tell you that it would be important to tell you, even if they said to you, she doesn't want anybody to know, and we don't want you to talk to her about it, but we think you should know.
Right. That's it.
I think I wouldn't have told anyone. No.
And then you could have prayed for her quietly.
Right.
I could have.
Yeah.
I can't do it now. All I can do is pray for her soul now. I can't pray for her to get better now. So.
Well, couldn't you say something like in that like we're praying for members of our congregation who are ill?
Yeah.
It's a general. Who knows?
Mhm.
What you're talking about,
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel sorry for I don't really know her family, but I feel sorry for Marcia Stolman. They were really good friends.
I spoke to Marcia a number of times. It's hard for Marcia, believe me. It's not easy for her.
Yeah.
She went walking with her all the time.
Oh yeah. I texted her yesterday when I found out. You could have blown me over.
Well, hopefully she has you and the golf team to play with this year. So you'll get some exercise on the golf course walking around there. So
she'll probably walk on her own. She's used to doing it.
Yeah, speaking of which, Arlene, I don't know when it's opening. I'm ready to go whenever it's ready to go. I'll probably be ready in 2 weeks, Arlene.
They were working on the golf course today.
Yeah, well, as soon as it's open, let me know as soon as it's opening, because we can play even a few holes. You and I are members I don't have to pay anything. Just go and tell them. Just tell Carrie or David we're going on. That's all. Anyway, Dan, I'm just proud of Scott. Getting this whole thing with the weekly email to everyone on Monday or Tuesday. I know it's a help. Marcy just said she's got the link Monday or Tuesday. Everyone's got the link for Friday and Saturday and the classes. Everyone's got it. Don't have to worry about where's the link. It's coming before. Usually the newsletter is coming out before the Tuesday class. So everyone has it for Tuesday. And in there, we put that there's no Wednesday class. Obviously, I can't be there because of the funeral, but everyone's updated with all the information, which is good, including Jennifer Judelsohn, which is important. I think people should know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know
No,
maybe Paul from the Jewish Leader appreciates that I send her what's going on every week. No one else.
Good.
Very few people send her what's going on but me.
I've sent it to the River East and the Hartford Current,
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah,
and I'm going to follow up this week. It wasn't in the River East, but I
saw
might have been on the borderline of when it was,
12
when
o'clock.
their deadline.
12 o'clock Tuesday.
So I might have been over that, but anyway, I'm going to keep track of it. And hopefully they'll get some publicity out.
I got to tell you guys, I am just so thrilled that we have all this publicity. The River East, the Jewish Leader, Hartford Current. It's
You've got
Holly,
someone
think?
coming up
think?
this.
Hmm?
I'm sorry.
I'm saying, who would have thought a couple of months ago we'd have all this publicity?
Yeah. Don't you have another speaker lined up?
Yeah, my cousin. As soon as we finish with Jen, I'm going to book him. Yeah.
Yeah, but don't you want to publicize it so that people know before the day?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I just want to finish up with Jen, and then we'll.
Okay.
I'm not going to do it right away. I'm going to.
Oh, all
Yeah.
right.
Chance to once Robbie and I, come up with a description, what you guys want. I'm going to speak to him and see what you guys want as far as Torah reading. So.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm
May
thrilled.
she rest in peace, Rabbi.
Mm.
And may she may Karen rest in peace, and may all her problems and issues be behind her.
Yeah, really. Well, it's to me, you know what, guys? I buried 4 people in their 80s and 90s in the last month. But when it's someone my age, Arlene, that's when it hits home. When it's someone my born in 1954 or 1955, and I have another friend that died this week also from 1955. So it hits home when it's someone my age, actually. Do you feel that way, Dan, too? If it's someone your age, it's different than when someone dies at 98 years old or 94. We have a number of members in their 90s. They're not going to live forever, but you'd expect it. But you don't expect someone 68 years old. The average age for a woman is 78 years old in this country.
Yeah. Well, I have 2 grandparents that are in their 90s and they're in a nursing home now, but they were close to not making it just a few months ago. And it gave me kind of I don't know, I was struggling with it because they're my grandparents and they're talking about having to pass and their children are taking care of them. And I have young children now. And it started me thinking about what's going to happen with my children when I get older, and will they have to take care of me, and will I have given them enough knowledge and information and love? And like it was, my mind was reeling for a while. And they're older. I don't want them to suffer. I want them to go in peace, right? But they were really struggling to find some peace and trying to make peace with just even going to the nursing home. And now we're locked up in this place, and why don't we just die and just give us a gun and things you'd never think you'd hear.
Well,
because they've never had that sort of thought before. They weren't really taking care of themselves either. So
the question is the quality of life. Like say like Eleanor Feldman. I'm going to her 94th birthday in 2 weeks. She just stares at the TV. I mean, what kind of life is that? I mean, if I visit her, she can't even say a word to me. It's tough, Arlene and Marcy. When I see her, she just stares at the TV.
She can't speak?
No, she doesn't speak. Very rarely.
Did she have a stroke or?
No, she's just older, and it's hard for her to communicate. So,
do you play guitar for her? What do you do when you see her? Do you?
Oh, I try to speak to her. I speak to the aide, and for her birthday, Harvey will be there. Barbara Squire will be there. Her family will be there. Ron Podovich, who I performed the Married with Megan, Abby Fobali's, that's the daughter of Eleanor. They'll be there. So yeah, I like it. I feel like I'm part of that family. And don't forget, Eleanor, remember Arlene, she used to come Friday nights to come pick her up.
Pick her up. Some of us used to take turns picking her up.
And that wasn't that long ago.
No,
right, Mark? Wasn't that long ago. So.
And she was in her 90s then, right? She was 92 or 90.
Yeah,
maybe more.
But
Yeah, it
I'm
was
just saying,
pre-COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
but
Well, Rabbi, think about it when unfortunately someone passes. I'm 10 years older than Karen.
yeah,
Mhm.
It turns my stomach a little bit. For
Yeah.
her, I don't mean it in a definitely for her, but I also say like, wow, you know, it's a little.
Yeah.
well, that's why I like squeezing as much as I can in a day. There's no guarantee.
Yeah,
It's no guarantee you're going to be around the next day. Seriously.
I agree with you.
I like to impact as many people as I can in one day. I impacted maybe 15 people already today, just before I even came here. But that's what I choose to do. A lot of people are lonely. A lot of people, have health issues. Some of my friends, some of my family. But you know what? It's nice that you can make the most of a day when you have energy and you have your health. Because as my grandmother say, health is wealth. If you don't have health, you don't have the energy, the kayach to do anything, right? Arlene, you don't have the kayak to play golf, which I did for 3 years.
Right.
I'm glad my back and my knees don't hurt anymore. I don't know if it's a matter of me strengthening it or proper form, but proper form definitely has everything to do in life. Proper form. You want to slouch in a couch, you'll feel the pain, right? You want to anything in life, you have to use right form in most things. So. Okay, so you want to learn now in memory of Karen on the page 148.
Absolutely.
Mm.
And there will be things on our YouTube channel. I'll speak to Scott. We're going to be putting a whole bunch of classes in memory of Karen will be on the YouTube channel in the next week. Okay. Okay. Tanya Rabbi Meir Omer. Abraisa taught Rabbi Meir said this. Remember, this goes back to when we were studying years ago in Brachot, the first tractate we studied together. The Shema may be recited from the time that, say, a person can distinguish between a wolf and a dog, because in those days people couldn't tell them apart. But if you look carefully, you can. The Rabbi Akiva said on this, if you can distinguish between a domesticated donkey and a wild donkey. Others say from the time you can see his friend at a distance of 4 amos and recognize them. Which of these Tanaic opinions do we follow? Rav Huna said, Halakha follows the others. What is that's the earliest time is from when a person recognizes a friend at a distance. So from, say, a few feet away, 6 feet away, you can see a friend and you know who it is. They'll say, okay, that's the time. And Bai said, with regard to tefillin, halacha is like the others. That the earliest time you can put on tefillin is when it's possible to recognize a friend at a distance of 4 amos. Who wants to read number 21 in memory of Karen tonight?
I can read it if no one else wants
Okay,
to.
Arlene, you'll start.
Because it is written in Davarim 28:10, and all the nations of the world will see that the name of Hashem is called upon you, and they will be in awe of you. And the phrase, the name of Hashem is called upon you, is interpreted on Daf 6a as referring to the wearing of the head tefillin. Since the nations need to see us wearing tefillin, the tefillin should not be put on until it is light enough to see another person.
Okay. By the way, Sharon's not going to be on until maybe 8 o'clock for the Kabbalah. I know she's going to want to see Jennifer, but she's not feeling well. It's not COVID, but maybe she'll tell you what it is. But I got a text from her. She won't be on till later. Okay.
Who won't be?
Sharon Peters.
Oh,
It's
okay.
But with regard to reciting the Shema, a person should act like, oh, I like this. I love that. Arlene, I love this word. Can you tell us what vasikin are? I love that word.
The word vasikin describes people who hold mitzvos especially dear and try to perform them in the best possible time and manner. See Rashi here and 226a.
Which is nice, isn't it, Arlene? You have a mitzvah and you want to do it the best way you can.
Right.
Like you want to do it, say, the earliest time that you can possibly do it. So vasikin, whatever, it's like people that are very scrupulous in performing the mitzvot. Like I saw a homeless guy today, and everyone was passing him by. They didn't have money. I didn't have much. I gave money, but he was very appreciative. Now, I know, Arlene, you're afraid that people spending
Yeah.
money on booze or
Mhm.
whatever. So I made sure when I saw him, I gave him a little bit, but I also gave him some food that I got at the place he was in front of. As you would be proud of, Arlene, right? I
Yes.
made sure if he was hungry, he had something to eat. He's not going to spend it and go to the next liquor store.
And you've over time, Rabbi, have persuaded me nicely in our conversations to be more tolerant.
Yeah.
And I like that, a little money and a little food.
Mhm.
I would give anybody money that I
Yeah.
could.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't want him to do bad things with it. I'd
Mhm.
feel bad if I gave him money and then he collected $1 from 30 people and overdose.
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
Bad,
Right.
but maybe I'm not responsible for that.
And Dorothy Schiff, may she rest in peace. I got to tell you, Arlene, Dorothy Schiff, may she rest in peace. She used to come like to my house like, almost every day and take me without knowing. She'd knock on my door and take me for a lunch at the in Norwich. But we used to try to help a person that she knew. She worked in a drug rehab. But we tried to help this guy with the drug rehab, and every time she gave him money, he spent it on drugs again. So I understand the point. He ended up killing himself with the drugs. But I always thought Freddie was gonna change. He was gonna change. He's gonna change. Kept saying he was gonna change, but he didn't have much of a support system, Arlene. He didn't have much of a support system. So he went back to the support system. He knew the support system. He knew with people that were using drugs. That was his gang. So unfortunately, he ended up killing himself with the drugs. So you have a good point.
If you ask for money for food, then I guess that you have to take people at what they say.
Mm-hmm.
And I've really reconciled myself with, if they use it for other things and something bad happens, I don't feel I can be responsible for that.
Right. And I told you the perfect point about Fred. For 1 year, I think her husband was so pissed off. I think she must have given him like $10,000 in the year. Seriously, Arlene, about 10,000.
Wow.
And she was a generous soul. But you know what? Eventually, he died from drug overdose. So, unfortunately, to say. Okay. For Yochanan said the Vasikin would be careful to complete the recitation Shema together with sunrise. So that's the earliest time. Tanya Nami Haki Vatikin. They therefore didn't begin reciting the Shema at the time mentioned by the others, which is much earlier than sunrise, but would postpone their recitation until shortly before sunrise time, like they do in the old city in Jerusalem. That's what they wait sunrise and everyone says it together. A Brisa was taught the Vasikin would complete the recitation of Shema together with sunrise, so they could join the blessing of the redemption, which is what? Ga'al Yisrael, who redeemed Israel, which follows immediately after the Shema to the Shemona Esrei prayer, and thus be found to be praying the Shemona Esrei by day. That is what? At sunrise. So what's the next note say there, 23?
As we learned in 7 above, the rabbis required a person to join the blessing of redemption to the Shemona Esrei prayer. So make now law lit sof law, meaning that he should not interrupt by speaking or even by waiting silently between reciting the concluding words of the redemption blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael, and beginning the Shemona Esrei.
So somech means like close. So you're reciting, it's going to be close. Somech, it's close to Gula, the redemption, to the Tefillah. Okay. Yep. So that's why we want to do it together to the, well, don't forget, Tefillah is the Shemona Esrei, right? That's an acronym for the Shemona Esrei. Did everyone know that Tefillah means the Shemona Esrei?
No.
Hey, welcome, Marty. Okay. Therefore, since ideally a person shouldn't pray Shemona Esrei before sunrise, what does that mean, Arlene? 24.
Although day halakhically begins at dawn, Amur HaShachar, ideally a person should not pray Shemona Esrei earlier than sunrise. Ha'etz hatabah.
Chama. Okay, that people abbreviate sometimes in the Torah world as Nates. It's Netz Chama. That's sunrise in Hebrew. Okay, everyone. So Netz Chama is a term for sunrise. The Vasikin would delay the recitation of Shema until shortly before sunrise in order to join redemption to the Shema Esrei. We have examined why it's proper to postpone reciting the Shema until close to sunrise, namely why, so that the Shema Esrei, which would be preferably not be recited until daytime, can be recited immediately after the redemption blessing that follows the Shema. If that's the reason, however, it should be just as good to recite the Shema later in the morning, recite the Shema Esrei immediately afterward. The fact of Vasikin took care to complete the Shema just before sunrise and pray the Shema Esrei exactly at sunrise, however, demonstrates that it's best to begin reciting the Shema Esrei at sunrise. The Gemara gives the source to this rule. So what's the source? 149. Rav Zera said this. What is the verse? Mikra. So what is the verse? What verse teaches us that it's best to recite the Shema Esrei exactly at sunrise? So he says, I found it. They will fear you until the rising of the sun before the moon comes up for generations upon generations. That's Psalms 72:5. Who wants to continue note 25 on page 149?
I can.
Okay,
ahead.
thank you.
This verse is King David's description of how the nation will serve Hashem during the reign of his son Shlomo.
Okay. So that was 25. So they will recite the Shema Esrei in fear of you exactly when, at sunrise, having been brought to the state of fear through recitation of the Shema just prior to Shema Esrei. Okay, so Marcy, that's just Rashi.
Rashi, yep.
The Gemara mentions a benefit a person receives, what? By joining redemption to the Shema Esrei at sunrise. So here's the case. Rav Jose ben Alakim testified in the name of the Holy Congregation in Jerusalem.
Let's see. See Rav Nisim Gaon here in the Schottenstein edition of Beitzah 27a note 17 for discussion of who the Holy Congregation in Jerusalem were.
Okay, so we don't know. We'd have to look at Beitzah, which is another tractate of the Talmud for that answer. So anyone who joins redemption to the Shema Esrei exactly at sunrise.
According to Tosafos.
So it says Tosafos that no harm will befall him. Okay, if you do this, the reason people do it is because there's not going to have any harm all day from them. 29.
Okay, because as Rashi on 4b explained, the requirement to join the redemption blessing to Shemona Esrei is derived from the fact that the last verse in Tehillim chapter 19 it is Hashem my rock and my redeemer, and the next chapter 20 begins, may Hashem answer you on a day of distress. The implication is that a person who joins the redemption blessing to his prayers will merit having Hashem answer him that day and save him from any distress or harm, according to Maharsha.
Isn't that cool, Arlene?
Mm-hmm. It is.
So if you're doing this, according to this, Rashi's saying that you can merit having God answer you and save you from any distress or harm. So
I like it.
That's why people do it. Yeah.
I gotta tell that to the kids.
Yeah.
So a question about it is raised, immediately answered. Rav Zera, what does he say? Hi, Neil. Ini. Zera said, is it really so? Why? I once joined the redemption blessing of Shemon Esrei at sunrise, and he's saying, we just said there's no harm. It's saying now harm, it befell me by day, but we just said that nothing is going to happen. So how can that be?
Can't turn the volume. Gotta turn it to mute.
Hi, Noy.
Sorry.
They said to him, what harm befell you? What is it? You were drafted by the king's men to bring myrtles to the house of the king. What is that? We'll finish this page. Marcy, what is that?
The king once wanted myrtle branches, and Rev Zera was drafted to be the one to bring them to him.
Okay, so the cases of myrtle branches here. So what harm befell him? They were drafted by the king, said you got to bring myrtle branches to him. But is that harm? Because you should have been willing even to pay a fee to see the face of the king, right? You want to see the Melech, the king? What's the problem? Yochanan said a person should always attempt to run to greet the kings of Israel. We don't have them anymore, but back then they did. And not only to greet the kings of Israel, but even to greet the king of idolaters. Oh, not that. Okay. Why should a person run to see even a non-Jewish king? 31 Marcy, why?
We understand that a person should run to greet Jewish kings because it is a mitzvah to honor them. But why should a person run to see an idolatrous king?
Why? Let's see. So, in the conclusion here, if he merits to greet Mashiach, what happens to the Messiah, he will have a basis of comparison by which to distinguish between extraordinary honor that will be bestowed upon the kings of Israel at that time and the far lesser honor enjoyed nowadays by the kings of idolaters.
Okay, according to Rashi here and to 58a.
Okay, we'll finish the next two lines and then we'll continue next time, which won't be next week because I won't be here. Remember, we're going to see my aunt in Shelton in 3 weeks. So next we get that as Purim. Okay, so the Gemara cites further evidence of the worthiness of joining the redemption blessing to Mona Esrei at sunrise. Okay, so we do the best we can with that, right? We're doing the best we can with that to pray, and it's something that I study in yeshiva all the time, that it was an important thing to do. You try to do the best you can with prayer, right? There's no guarantee. You know what? If you do it and something bad happens to you, say I had a car accident when I was going to the Crown. I did it that morning, so I'm going to start blaming God and saying, "Hey, I did it, and I had," but as Arlene and I can attest to, when we've had car accidents, it could have been worse. We could have been killed, right?
Right.
I know friends that were killed, and some people I see, they can't even move their bodies. They're paralyzed for life. So when things happen, Arlene, it could be a wake-up call. That person learned a lesson. That hit you.
No.
The guy who hit me learned a lesson too. But it cost him in the end for his insurance. But I did it in a kind way, Arlene, as you were probably. I said, listen, I'm not hurt. Thank God we weren't hurt. And the car can be fixed. And I got paid for it eventually. Took time, a month, but got paid eventually for it. And everything's good. It's as good as new.
You know, I think
Arlene was worse. It was a worse situation. Arlene got hit by a drunk driver. So
the way I always looked at it, Rabbi, was that I lived with, I have some issues, but relatively okay. And that it may, maybe, I carry that prayer in my wallet, and maybe that was it.
Yeah.
Because head-ons are notorious for people not surviving.
Yours was a lot worse. My son had a head-on too. A lot worse than me.
So, by doing this, maybe you don't avert the evil decree, but maybe it lessens the impact because of whatever. I don't know how to say that correctly, but
Or there could have been something even worse that was coming your way, right? That you don't know about, that was averted. So
so
well, we don't know for sure, but I like to think that, if you live your life the right way, that you can avert certain things. I mean, that's just the story of my life. I know I had a lot of serious. You look in the last year, I could have died easily. But I'm just saying, you have to look at it that way. You can avert more serious things, and we're here. In Karen's case, unfortunately, Marty, we're just learning in memory of Karen, didn't work out that way. We didn't know to pray for her. We didn't know she was sick, Neil. So anyway, the thing is, we couldn't pray for her. Now, as we said, we only could pray for her soul. We can't pray for recovery since we didn't know about it, unfortunately. So Marty, you wanted to say a word about Karen? You said in the meeting today about on the ritual committee, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know how much everyone remembers what she did for our synagogue, because in any case, so for many years when we first came, Fran and I, Karen was the head of the ritual. She was the head of the schools committee, and she was a teacher for many years, so she was probably one of the most qualified school chair people we've ever had, and she was really remarkable in that respect. But it wasn't just that, it was everything else that she did. And later on, when I became ritual chairman, the first person I called, because I wanted some diversity in the group, and the first person I called was Karen. And then I called Arlene, because, thinking people, people who don't necessarily think the same is the best way to really provide the greatest. I hate the word diversity the way it's used today, but
Yeah.
that was really what it was, and that's really what I was going for before it became a curse word.
Maximum coverage,
What's that?
maximum coverage.
Maximum
Oh,
coverage.
that's a good
Thought.
one. Neil.
Maximum coverage of thought, Neil.
Right.
And it's just, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's a tribute to Karen, among others, that she was the first person I thought of that doesn't think like me, but I really respected her for so many things, and the whole world's gonna miss her. So.
Right.
Marty, even when we had meetings all the time with Karen, I didn't see eye to eye all the time, but I respected that she had a lot more teaching experience than I did. So she comes from a perspective of a teacher who taught for many years. So a lot of times I learned from her that, okay, maybe this is best for the culture. When I came here, I didn't know from the Colchester community. She taught in the Colchester community. She could tell me about what the model was about teaching the kids in this community, which is a little different than Marty and I grew up in New York. It was a little different. The kids over here were a lot different than I remember growing up. So, we dealt with we dealt the best way we can of giving, and thanks to Karen, we gave great education. Marty will attest to it. To so many kids that graduated from our Hebrew school went on to be teachers. It's great for Marty and Fran that's a testament to them that so many of our students. I saw one today that became a teacher, and it makes a difference in the classroom.
I
Yeah, go ahead.
agree with you, Marty. I always was impressed by, I also did not always agree with her. I don't always agree with you, Marty. I don't always agree with you, Rabbi. I can go down the
I know. We know.
But you meet her outside of that realm, she was just wonderful to talk to. And she always helped out at the at any event that I coordinated for the synagogue. And I thought that's really a characteristic to be cherished, that you can have your opinion, but you don't, but you can still like the person, and you can still want to help the person.
I
She did that well.
I guess the thing that disturbed me when I got the call was that it just seems that we weren't given a chance to go visit and spend some time with her and try to improve her life at the end as much as we possibly could. And then we also weren't given an opportunity for the prayer. So, I get it that families, particularly young, our children are not as, they may not be as religious. They may not have as much faith on a person-to-person basis as we did, or as we do today. But her family, and maybe Karen herself, didn't give us an opportunity to help with prayer, which not only would have helped her, but would have helped us as well. And I feel like we missed an opportunity here. We missed an opportunity because of her choice, and I understand her choice. I was talking to my son and my sister about this weekend. It was like, on Sunday when we found out, it's like, wow, what does that say about what we really think of prayer if we don't even give it a chance? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that bothered me a little bit, because I started questioning.
Yeah.
I started questioning faith in general and so on. if we just give up on prayer before we even give it a chance. So,
We were talking about that earlier, Marty, that exact same thing, that it was her choice or her family's choice, but it hurt us in a way too, because we didn't have that option.
Can I say something? I'm hoping that if she was staying with her daughter, that she was getting prayer at that community. Let's hope
Yeah.
that she was. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Even if it
let's
was
hope-
from
let's- we
strangers,
don't know
let's,
for sure.
you
but
know,
yeah.
let's hope,
Yeah.
because that would be horrible.
Well,
If she didn't get it anywhere, I hope she did from them.
it's a terrible loss of a young person.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That age
But-
is way too young for people to pass, way too young.
I mean, I've run into a lot of teachers this week and in my travels around, and a lot of people remember her so kindly about she was a great teacher. She was a great way to relate to kids, and I'll always remember the way she set up such. And when Marty and I went to Hebrew school, everything was so professional. Marty will tell you the way she ran it, like from a teacher's perspective, we really we had meetings, teachers meetings, and everything was done professionally with all types of agendas. Not everyone was able to lead like that, like Karen, but she knew from being in the Colchester school system how to organize a school.
How many years was she the chair? Because we came in after Kathy was already chair when Logan came in.
yeah, she was chair from before when Fran first arrived too. So, and Fran came a number of years before I did. So, she had that job for a long time.
Oh, it was a long
Wow.
time. I'm not
She
sure.
had a 3-inch binder that had every bit of knowledge in it, and it was really kind of cool because some of us, some of us could teach pretty well, but we didn't know the community as well. And so she brought so much of that because she was teaching these kids in grade school as a math teacher, and then we'd see them as at Hebrew school. I mean, not everybody, of course, right? But so many of them that came from Colchester. So
Right.
She had one of those binders for the board meeting too, Marty. And it was pretty thick.
Wow.
It was pretty thick, and if a question came up, she'd just say, "Hold on." Now, this
That's
is what we
true.
said.
Arlene, that's true. She came up with the witticisms, the criticisms that I always said at the end
Right.
of the meeting.
and she'd write everything down, and then at the end of the meeting, she'd always come out with, "So we said this, and this, right?"
Yeah.
We all agreed that this is.
Right.
Sometimes we get so formal with the minutes, we forget to see the forest through the trees. So
Right.
she made sure that we got to see the forest through the trees. So
She's a great loss. She's a great
Mhm.
loss. I'm glad she got to see her grandchildren.
Yes.
One of the first things I thought about.
Right. That's great that she had grandchildren that she can love her so much. And only thing we could do now is we give charity in her name, we study her name, we pray. So Friday night and Saturday, we'll remember her. Friday night especially, I put it in the weekly email that people will, including Marcia Stolman, will speak about her, and we can share among ourselves what we feel about her, since it won't be done by us unfortunately at the funeral, I was told. So we'll have to do it among ourselves. So
Before I forget, Rabbi, I am running the Zoom for United Brethren on Friday. So unfortunately, I wish I could be there, but I cannot be there.
well, you know what? We'll do the same thing Saturday, Arlene. If you want to speak about her, Deanie and I came up with a format. I'm going to give time to think about it on Friday. We'll do it at the end of the service on Friday. I don't know what time your service ends, but it'll be like at 7:15 or so when we do it on Friday. I'm not sure when you end at Hebron.
We end at 8. We're 7 to 8 o'clock. Zoom
Oh, so why
starts
don't you
at
do it-
6:30. Zoom starts at 6:30, and we get services are over at 8, and we're usually on to like 8:15, just kibitzing.
Well, I'll send another email after the funeral tomorrow to see what people said. But yeah, so I'll make a note to people that if you can't make it Friday night, we'll go do the same thing Saturday. Deanie, I'll speak to Deanie. I'm sure she'll agree that it's fine. We'll do it. So if you can't make it Friday night, Arlene, you can speak about Karen on Saturday as well. No problem.
Otherwise, I would definitely be there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Anyone else want to say something about Karen before we study in her name tonight? Not sure.
I have one thought though, which doesn't involve Karen, but there's a program on television called Grantchester. It's a BBC production, and it features an Anglican priest. And he went to see the bishop, and there's a placard in the anteroom as he was waiting that said, "You shall love the Lord thy God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might." And I was very amused to see that there.
Neil, that comes right out of the Torah. So
Right.
I
it's
know it
Old-
does. I
it's
know
Old
it.
Testament. It's
Yeah.
Old
I
Testament.
know it's, but I always think that the Goyim are more interested in the New Testament than the Old. The fact that there was something from the Old Testament that we use repeatedly amused me.
You know, it's interesting. I don't know if you've ever been to a church, ritual, mass, but many of the Christian faiths, they say holy, holy, holy as part of their as part of their service. Well, where does that come from? It comes from kadosh, 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 and there's many other little things. If you know what we do, and then you go and sit in on the first time I heard that was a Lutheran church, but I've also heard it in a Catholic church. So if you know what we do and you go and listen to what they do, you find out that it's so similar. How many people don't know that the 10 Commandments are different between Catholic 10 Commandments, the Jewish 10 Commandments, and certain Protestant 10 Commandments? They're different. So even the Catholic and Protestant are different from each other. So, I mean, it's interesting when you start to compare and you learn how other people do certain things. I'm sure that you're familiar with a lot of those things, but.
When I was in college, the synagogue was too far away for me to go to. So I used to go to church with my friends and do my own thing, but it was interesting how many similar phrases there were. And for me, just being in a house of worship was a good thing. And I could focus on my own, religious beliefs, but it's amazing.
Well,
Yeah.
certainly the teachings are different.
Yeah.
But when it comes to ritual, because of where it came from originally, it's very simple. Well,
Yeah.
It's not very similar,
There's a
but
lot
there
of
are similarities in certain aspects.
Which often makes me wonder why there are so many disagreements between religions, because we're all
Yeah.
pretty much saying the
That's
same.
good. That's a good point, Arlene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I never understood was in Ireland, Catholics and Protestants
Oh, boy.
and the war between each other,
Yeah.
right? I never understood that. And then I read Trinity, and that helped me understand it. But then I started doing more reading and understood it further. I get it. Here you have two Christian faiths, similar to some degree, but yet very different. And yet they're warring with each other, physically warring with each other. And the question was why? And when you realize it all comes down to economics and being able to label people. So isn't that what we do today? I mean, we label people that we don't like or people we disagree with. We throw labels around, I mean,
It had nothing to do with religion.
it has nothing to do with
They
it.
just happened to be two groups.
Right.
It had to
It
do
has
with power.
nothing to do with religion. You're right.
It's power.
It's
Who is in charge? That is the whole point of that whole mess and most other warring type situations.
You're right.
Who is in charge? Who has the power? And that's what it's mostly about.
And you're right. You're right.
Neil, if you have
Yeah.
BCC and you haven't watched Vienna Blood yet, take a look at it.
Vienna Blood.
It involves a Orthodox Jewish family.
Okay.
Vienna Blood.
Put it
All
on
right.
the list.
I'll have
Arlene
to
will
look
put it on
for
the
it.
list.
All right. Maybe we should do some Gemara
Okay.
tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, what the heck?
Why have we got it?
Where are we?
We're on 74B1, Neil. Right at the very beginning, right at the second paragraph.
Okay.
74B1. The Gemara cites.
1 second.
It certainly does.
74B1.
74B1?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I must have the wrong book.
Wait, what book? Wait, let me check what I 74B1.
I think I do. I have 43. I should have.
Yeah, I that's where I have it.
Yeah, me too.
74B1
Wrong
is what I
book.
have.
I was in the next book.
Oh, the new book, Arlie?
I was in the new
Already?
book.
You're in the new book?
Yep. Well, I
What's
haven't
the
read
new-
it yet, but I own it.
What's
Oh,
the new
okay.
book?
The
Oh,
third
the next-
volume.
The
Was it
next
third
volume,
volume?
we're gonna
Yeah.
start.
Oh, this is the third. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna get to it around Passover time.
Oh, look at that, 74B. I went to 74B, Marty, and I said, it's in the middle of the book. This can't be right.
We're near the end of the book, Arlene. We're
I
making
know.
our way back to the end.
This is better. This is better. All right.
Okay,
Okay.
we're all in agreement. The Gemara cites the final segment.
Yes.
Okay. Who's going to read the notes for 74B1? Neil, you're the leadoff guy. You're here this week.
Okay, I'm here. I'll do it.
Okay. The Gemara citing the final segment of the Mishnah here. So what did it say? It says, Ufoseki mo bashar hagavoa. The buyer wants to avoid a loss in the event of a price decrease. He must stipulate with the seller for the best price. Rabbi Yehuda says, even though he didn't stipulate with him for the best price, he could still say to him, if the price falls, either give me at today's price or give me back my money too.
Phew. See 72B notes 27 and 28 for an explanation of this dispute.
Okay, well,
I remember that one.
the Gemara is recounting a related incident. Hahu Gavra the Yahiv Zuze. So a Gavra is a man, a giver. There was a guy who gave money to a seller for future delivery of jewelry. What happens? Lindunya deve chamuha. What was it for? His father-in-law's dowry, number 3.
His father-in-law had asked him to be his agent and contract with a seller for the bride's jewelry. He contracted for certain jewelry which the seller had in stock and paid for it, stipulating a future date for delivery.
L'sov zal nedunya. In the end, sof is the end in Hebrew, modern Hebrew. The dowry that he ordered became cheaper before it was delivered.
The father-in-law was not prepared to accept the dowry at the expensive price, and the son-in-law therefore wanted to renege on the deal.
So what happened? So Atu lakame de Rav Papa. So what did they do? They came before the great sage Rabbi Papa. They said, what are we going to do about this situation? They came before him, and in this case, Amar Lei, and so Rabbi Papa said this to the buyer, I pasatimo kashar hagavoa. If you, pasak is to stipulate, if you stipulated with the seller that your contract for the best price, shekil kahashta, you can take the goods at the present price, the elo, if you didn't stipulate, shekil ki me'akra, you can only take it at the original price. 5.
Rev Papa ruled, in accordance with the Tanakama of our Mishnah, that if the price of the contracted merchandise falls, the buyer is not entitled to the lower price unless he stipulated so in advance. Indeed, the Mishnah also cites the conflicting opinion of Rev Yehuda, who holds that the buyer can insist on the cheaper price. In Rev Yehuda's view, the stipulation is implicit in every forward contract. It is presumed that the buyer reserves the right to retract if the price declines before delivery. Rev Papa, however, followed the view of the Tanakama, whose anonymously stated view represents that of the majority.
The bird loves it, Neil.
Oh, he's into this whole conversation.
I can't believe it. Okay. Rav Papa's ruling is then questioned. What happens? Amalei Rabbanan Rav Papa. The Rabbanan, the rabbi said this to Rav Papa. Ve'i lo pasak shakil ke me ikara. If he didn't stipulate for the best price, does he have to take the goods at the original price? Mo'ot ninu. So what is it? It's a case where the buyer merely paid the money for the purchase. He didn't perform a shicha on the good. Ma'ot lo kanu. And the mere payment of money doesn't affect acquisition. Number 6.
Although payment of money does not affect the binding acquisition, it does represent a commitment and creates a moral obligation on the parties to finalize the deal. Although either party can still retract, the retracting party is liable to a former censure of the court known as a mi shapara. See
That's the
Mishnah.
next note. That's the next note. Okay. Therefore, the buyer is still allowed to retract. When Papa answers, Amrlahu, he said to them, Ananami la kabule ale mishapara ka amina. I too meant only that whoever retracts has to take upon himself the mishapara censure. E pasak bashar gavoa. If you just read it. If the buyer stipulated for the best price and the price fell, the seller doesn't want to deliver the goods for lower price. Mocher ka hadarbe is the seller who's retracting. The Kabbalah ale mocher mishapara. And the seller has to take upon himself the mishapara censure, ilo pasach. If, on the other hand, the buyer, he didn't stipulate for the best price and the price fell, and the buyer doesn't want to pay the original high price he agreed to, lokeach ka hadarbe. It's the buyer who's retracting. Mekabel alehu lokeach mishapara. The buyer has to take upon himself the mishapara censure. Number 8.
Thus, the stipulation for the best price is necessary to free the buyer from the mishapara censure. Without the stipulation, he legally has the right to retract since he did not perform Mashiach, but he opens himself up to the mishapara for reneging on his commitment.
Ravina challenges Rabbi Papa's ruling. Number 9.
Ravina's objection stems from a dispute between Rev Shimon and the rabbis in the Mishnah on 44a regarding the acquisition of movable goods. There it was taught that according to the rabbis, that is the Tanna Kama of that Mishnah, payment does not affect the acquisition of movables, since both parties can withdraw from the sale until the buyer performs Mashiach. Rev Shimon, however, maintains that the payment is binding as far as the buyer is concerned. He cannot retract once he has given his money to the seller, but the seller can retract even after he has received payment. He is not committed until he parts with his goods by the buyer performing Mashiach. Now, the accepted view is that of the rabbis that payment is not binding at all, even with respect to the buyer. However, it does affect acquisition to the extent of imposing the mishapara censure on the retracting party. That is, once payment has been made, the buyer, as well as the seller, is committed to go through with the sale or else accept a mishapara. In our case, Rev Papa ruled that when the buyer executed the forward contract and made payment, he did not acquire the goods, but should be merely subject to a mishapara if he retracted. This accords with the view of the rabbis mentioned above. However, there is a novelty to Rev Papa's ruling. One might argue that since the buyer contracted for future delivery and presumably anticipated the possibility of a price decrease, he did not intend to subject himself to a mishapara if the price falls. Arguably, the right to retract without suffering a mishapara in the event of a price decrease is implicit in every forward contract. Since any sale is subject to cancellation even after the money is paid, albeit with the suffering of the mishapara, perhaps a forward contract is subject to cancellation even without suffering a mishapara. Actually, Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah took the position and ruled that if the price falls, the buyer is allowed to retract even if he did not stipulate in advance. However, Rev Papa accepted the view of the Tanna Kama, who ruled that in the absence of an advance stipulation, the buyer cannot retract. Ravina will now challenge Rev Papa on this point, questioning his assumption that the halacha follows the Tanna Kama of our Mishnah. See Rashi and Tosafos.
I think that I think that there's a difference here if you're using an agent. So
Yeah.
earlier when it talked about having the son-in-law was going to buy the jewelry for his father-in-law's dowry of the daughter. So here's what Steinsaltz says. It says, and he may fix a price with him at the higher price. When a person pays for merchandise in advance, relying on an established market price, he is permitted to stipulate that if the price goes down, he will be entitled to pay the new lower price. But if he does not make such a stipulation, he is bound by the original price he fixed following the first Tana in our Mishnah. So I think that was the fairly easy one. What happens if the price goes up?
I was wondering.
Nobody's going to make him pay more. There's not even a discussion about it. So I thought that was a bit trouble. Then it goes on to say a certain man gave money. If the buyer does not stipulate that he is to be entitled to the best possible rate for the merchandise, and the price goes down, and he wishes to cancel a contract, he's subject to the curse of, and it has it in quotes, he who punished. But if he was buying merchandise on behalf of someone else, the father-in-law, and prices fell, he may demand to receive the merchandise at the lower price or to have the money refunded, even if he failed to make a stipulation at the time of the purchase. For in this case, neither he nor the person who commissioned him is subject to the rabbi's curse. So that's kind of interesting, right? So
Yeah.
if the buyer has to stipulate that I want it at the best price, but if he uses an agent, he doesn't have to stipulate that, and he can still demand that he gets it at the best price. But if the price goes up, the seller is the only one that takes it in the shorts here. It's like, all right.
Well, but assumedly, the seller has purchased and has in stock the merchandise. So he has already paid for it. If the price goes up, he hasn't effectively lost anything except on paper. He has not really lost anything because he has paid for the merchandise a while ago. The original agreed upon price was a fair price, assumedly. So he hasn't lost in that case.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot that part. Yeah. It's to having it in stock. So it's already sold at the moment he gets the money.
Right. The only case in question is if it goes down, who's in trouble?
The acquisition.
And that's what we're covering here.
See, Rabbi, this is something I don't understand. So we place such a high high point on the fact that you have to acquire something before it becomes yours. And here it's never really acquired. The money is transferred, but that doesn't satisfy the requirements for acquisition.
You're right.
Why is anyone held to any of this?
Yeah. We normally have all these stipulations about it, right?
We didn't even talk about the acquisition portion of this. All we said is that you're going to give them money. Now, maybe they'll talk about it.
And I don't think we see this in today's world, right? I mean, it'd be a rarity to have, I think, someone come into a shop on prepaid merchandise and discuss whether the base price has gone up or down. You've sold it, you've paid for it. When you pick it up,
Well, you do layaway, right? So when you do layaway, you're paying a certain price, and then when you go to pick it up, it's that same price.
Right.
Yeah.
No extra price. Yeah.
Whether it's going up or down, it's yours.
That's right.
In fact, effectively, it's yours as soon as you pay for it.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Then you acquire it right there. Yeah, it's yours. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see what goes from here. Who's up with the next notes?
You gotta
was-
finish this page.
9. Amar le Ravina le Papa. Venus said Rav Papa, but how do you know the Rabbanan he defliege Alan and the Rabbi Shimon that the ruling of the Tanakam of our Mishnah, whoever's the author is in according with the rabbis who argue with Rabbi Shimon, low kanu. It say that the payment of money does not affect acquisition. Here we go, but merely makes the buyer subject to a misha parak censure if he retracts. But filo hachi ipasak kashar gavod. Nevertheless, rabbis hold if the buyer stipulated that his contract should be for the best price, shakil kidshashta, can he take the goods at the current cheap price? Ilo pasak. But if he didn't stipulate shakil kid miakara, he must take them at the original expensive price, or else suffer the mishapara censure. Number 10.
That is, we do not say that a stipulation for the best price is implicit in every forward contract. And we maintain this position even though payment does not finalize the buyer's commitment, but merely makes him liable for a mishapara.
Okay. So that was 10, right? Dilma Rav Shimon he. Perhaps the ruling of the Tanakam is according to Rav Shimon, the Amar Ma'ot Konrad, says the payment of money does affect the acquisition of the buyer. And that is why it is only if the buyer expressly stipulates that his contract is for the best price, Shakil ki hashta, that he can take the goods at the current cheap price, ilo pasak Shakil ki kara. But if he didn't stipulate, he has to take them at the original expensive price. Why? Mishum dekane lahu zuzeh. Because his payment of the money affected his acquisition at the former price. 11.
Since according to Rev Shimon, payment finalizes acquisition for the buyer and he can no longer retract, it stands to reason that even in the case of the forward contract, he's bound to the original price because he acquired it at that price. There is no implicit stipulation in every forward contract that the buyer will get the future lower price because the deal is finalized at the time of payment. Thus, if he did not make any stipulation and the price fell below delivery, he must nevertheless pay the higher price for which he contracted. So we're talking about all this, but clearly there's no acquisition and Rev Shimon is wrong. And that's why the halacha is against Rev Shimon here.
Yeah.
Because no acquisition occurred.
That's true.
That was 11, Rabbi.
So what's happening with Ravina? Ravina conclude the argument. Haval the Rabbanan, according to rabbis who say payment doesn't affect acquisition. What happens bein pasak, bein lo pasak? It stands whether the buyer pasak is to stipulate. Whether he stipulated or didn't stipulate, shakel ki hashta. What happens? He can take the goods at the current cheap price, the atre de inish atartal zila, because the person's intention when he executes a forward contract is to take delivery at the cheap price, and the stipulation is therefore implicit in the contract. Number 12, the long 12. Okay.
Since according to the rabbis, payment does not finalize an acquisition, but merely subjects both parties to a mishapara, if they retract, reason dictates that in the case of a forward contract, the buyer implicitly reserves the right to retract without suffering a mishapara if the price falls below before delivery. He paid in advance only to guarantee that he would not have to pay more later and if the price rises. But he did not intend to commit himself to the current price if the price declines. Thus, the ruling of the Tanakhama of our Mishnah that the buyer must stipulate in advance does not seem to accord with the view of the rabbis. Rather, it represents the view of Rev Shimon that payment makes a sale binding upon the buyer, and therefore, in absence of an express stipulation, the buyer is bound to the former price, according to Rashi and Tosfot and Ritva. If we take the words of the Tanakhama to be in accordance with Rev Shimon's view, then the dissenting view of Rev Yehuda that no express stipulation is required represents the view of the rabbis that payment does not finalize the acquisition. Thus, Ravina actually suggests adopting Rev Yehuda's view because it is not a minority view, but rather represents the opinion of the rabbis, which is accepted as halacha.
Just doesn't seem right to me.
Which part?
Well, that you can get it for less, you can pay for it now and get it for less.
But the value is less.
I know the value is less, but it's like a done deal. You
you-
want it, you paid for it. You're having them hold on to you. Maybe that could have been sold to somebody else if you didn't do that, or if you didn't take possession. Well, it just
But
doesn't
we
seem.
learned earlier that holding it for the sake of getting more money, the
Right.
seller getting more money
Yes,
is ribis.
right.
So you can't do that. So
But it wasn't ribis at the time.
It wasn't ribis at the time. So he's holding it gratis, right?
Yeah,
And as Neil pointed out again, that he's got it in stock. I always learned that stock is money.
Right.
So if you keep stock, then it's costing you.
yes.
So I feel for the seller, because if the price goes up, there's no discussion of any compensation.
Yeah, I guess, I hear what you're saying and I don't disagree with it. It just doesn't seem to, just doesn't seem to be right to me. You've already purchased it. You know what the price is. You are holding it. It's true. And you have overhead to hold it.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I could argue either side.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. It just seems a little unfair that you've come to a deal. You have a commitment, but I'm not going to pick it up for 2 months. And then you come back and you say, the prices have gone down. I don't want to pay as much. I don't know.
I agree with the.
I think about today.
I agree with the commitment part.
Yeah.
I do.
But you think today, like if you're building a house, how many people building a house that the builder says it's going to be $300,000 and it doesn't come in at more than that because something happens or something. So you say, oh, I'm not taking this house. I know you've bought all the material and you've done this and you've done, that's sort of what I'm thinking about.
It's a different world today than that.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Although I remember, Mel talking about the similarities between the law, old Judaic law, and then laws of today, and how so much of it is carried over, and so much of the thought process is carried over.
And you can see that in so many things. I don't think you can really see it in this one.
No.
It's interesting.
Well, we obviously have a major disagreement among the rabbis, even.
Right.
So, and whatever your position you would take, you have some rabbis backing you up.
Right. Yeah. So this isn't over yet, right?
I read what the answer is, and the answer is that you're going to find, in accordance with Rev Yehuda, that you can, if the price goes down and you stipulate it up front, then you cannot get the lower price unless you let me start again. If you stipulated it up front, you can get the lower price. If you didn't stipulate it up front, then you can't. But if you used an agent to buy it, then that's a different story. And even if you didn't stipulate it up front, they considered that, in fact, you would have stipulated up front that I get the cheapest price. So therefore you have a claim to argue for the lower price.
Oh, I do like if you stipulate it, that makes sense to me. If you stipulate it up front.
That isn't an argument.
No. But it's funny about the agent though, because you think if you have asked an agent, someone to do it for you, either it's pre-known that if an agent does it, that's the agreement, or why doesn't the agent do the same thing? Make it clear.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, the agent should have made the same stipulation. I mean, you can assume that the person doing the buying would have said that, but he just wasn't there.
Right.
And the agent didn't think of it. Which strikes me as just a tad hairy
Yes,
or presumptuous, I think is the word I would use.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
So where
To
are
get my bill.
Are you giving a discount, Neil?
Neil?
Yeah,
I-
senior discounts.
I only pay bills that have a self-addressed stamped envelope for the return of the money, like in the old days, like in the old days.
I'm just happy it has an envelope.
Oh, man, you crack. Okay. Rav Papa retorts to Ravina. He's retorting. Amrle, he said to him, Amor the Amar of Shimon. One could say Rav Shimon said that payment is binding upon the buyer. What happened? B'chad Tara. Only with a good state at one price. Chad, one price, Tara. Bitre Tare Miyamar. Did he say, so when payment was made in advance and the goods had two prices, what is, the price was expected to decline? No. Shimon says that if the payment is made on a forward contract and the price is expected to decline, the deal is not binding upon the buyer. Rather, he's merely subject to a Misha par censure. Thus, dispute Shimon and the rabbis doesn't apply to the case of our Mishnah, he's saying. 13.
So if we can't agree, let's just throw out the question. According to Rav Papa, Rav Shimon differentiates between the cases of one price and those of two prices. One price cases are those where the price remains stable, or alternatively, the buyer did not contemplate a price change when he made payment. This includes cases where payments are made for immediate delivery, but the delivery was delayed and the price changed in the meantime. It is classed as a one price case because the buyer did not contemplate two prices at the time of the payment. Two prices means a case where the buyer anticipated a price fluctuation. Thus, such a case occurs when the buyer advances payment on a forward contract and the price declines in the interim. Since he contracted for future delivery, he presumably anticipated a drop in the price. Who presumes a drop in the price?
Yeah. You presume
Not
it's going to
these
go
days.
up. You presume it's
Right?
going to go up, not down.
Everything goes up, nothing comes down. Rav Papa
Gasoline is down.
maintains- What's that?
Gasoline is down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's because it's fluctuating and you can't catch it.
Yeah.
That's true. Yes.
Rav Papa maintains that in Rav Shimon's opinion, payment is binding on the buyer only in one price cases. In two price cases, the payment is not binding because the buyer, anticipating the decline in prices, never intended to be bound by the payment. However, although not fully binding, the payment does not make the parties liable to the Mishapara censure. Thus, Rav Shimon agrees with the rabbis in the case of a forward contract. Payment merely makes the parties liable to a Mishapara if they retract. Accordingly, one cannot contend that the ruling of the Tanakama of our Mishnah reflects the view of Rav Shimon rather than that of the rabbis. There is no dispute between Rav Shimon and the rabbis in the case of our Mishnah. Even according to Rav Shimon, the buyer can retract if he's willing to suffer a mishapera. Thus, the Tanakama's ruling that the buyer must stipulate in advance that his contract is for the best price perforce means that he did not stipulate he is subject to a mishapera, as Rav Papa said above, even though the payment does not finalize the buyer's commitment. We do not say that the contract is for the best price unless the buyer expressly stipulated so. And that's what we talked about, right? So we said, if the buyer and the seller are direct, then he has to stipulate it ahead of time. But if it's an agent, he gets away with it because it's assumed that he would have said it. Okay. 13, Rabbi.
Welcome, Scott. See you, Shane the pun. Okay.
Hi, Scott.
Rav Papa proves that Rav Shimon agrees that the payment isn't binding in case where a price decline is anticipated. The ilo tema haki, if you do not say so, Misha para belokeach, Rabbi Shimon the late lay, there would be no case of Misha para with respect to a buyer according to Rabbi Shimon.
14.
Oh, I was in the wrong one. Okay. If payment is always binding on the buyer, there can never be a case of him being liable to a mishapera. The mishapera censure is reserved for cases where the parties can legally retract but are morally obliged not to do so. Now, before payment is made, there's no strong moral obligation and the retracting party does not incur the mishapera censure. If, on the other hand, payment has already been made and it is fully binding, the buyer cannot be liable to the mishapera because he does not have the legal right to retract. Rav Papa contends that it is unreasonable to say that according to Reb Shimon, the mishapera censure is never applied to the buyer. As he goes on to prove, Reb Shimon agrees that the buyer is sometimes liable to a mishapera. Rav Papa claims that this holds true when there are two prices. I guess because if there's only one price, there's no discussion.
Yeah. If you say that is indeed so, the mishapara never applies to the buyer according to Rav Shimon, Atanya. It can't be so. If we have learned in a brisa authored by Rav Shimon, the man himself. 15.
The Gemara here cites only part of the Baraisa. It is quoted in full above on page 48a. The Baraisa begins by stating that that payment of purchase money does not affect acquisition. It goes on to state that the foregoing is indeed the strict letter of the law, but nevertheless, the sages said, etc., as cited by the Gemara here.
Oh, from above.
I think they
got
just didn't want to repeat it.
I got you. Yep. Okay.
In any event, this is indeed the law. Nevertheless, the sage said, considering one who retracts from a deal, one who exacted retribution from the people of the generation of the flood will ultimately exact retribution from someone who doesn't abide by his word. Last note, 16 for you. And then we're finishing the Gemara. Oh.
I'm trying to understand what you just read. It says, nevertheless, the sages said concerning one who contracts from the deal, the one retract. Okay, goes back on the one who exacted retribution from the people of the generation of the flood. The people of the generation of the flood.
Noah.
Oh, it's a direct quote. That's why. Okay. All right.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I got it. Okay. All right. 16. This is part of the text of the mishapera censure. For the full text, see above on 48a. Okay. I couldn't understand why it was bringing up the people of the generation of the flood, but it's a quote. Okay.
Yep. Okay. Last page before the next mission. 74b3. My mikol makom. What does the price mean with the words in any event? Mikol makom is any event. Makom is an event. Lav does it not mean the lo shna lokech, the lo shna mocher. There's no difference between the buyer or the seller retracts for any event, whichever of them retracts. The Kabbalah and mishapara is liable to the mishapara censure. Thus, Rav Shimon agrees that in some cases mishapara censure applies to the buyer. Rav Papa concludes his proof. Ella, rather, we may conclude that Mikamar Rabbi Shimon, when Shimon said that payment is binding on the buyer, Bechad Tara, referring to the case of Chad, one price, Bitre Tare Lo Amar, the case of two prices, he didn't say it. Thus, in case of two prices, the buyer is subject to a mishapara if he retracts. The Gemara questions Rav Papa's ruling from a different aspect. Amalei Rav Acha Berei the Rav Ashi. Rav Acha, the son of Rav, said to Ashi, the tipokle, let it emerge that in the case that came before Rav Papa, the buyer isn't subject to mishapara, because at the outset, the father-in-law made the buyer his agent, and thus he wasn't acting on his own behalf. Number 17.
Want me to read?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Arlene, you're up, and Scott, Marcy.
From the outset, the buyer, the son-in-law, was acting merely as his father-in-law's agent. When the price fell, it was the father-in-law who retracted from the deal. How then can the son-in-law be held morally culpable and incur the mishapara censure? The father-in-law himself is also not liable to the censure because he can claim that his agent did not act responsibly, for he should have explicitly stipulated for the best price. An agent who acts irresponsibly is considered to have deviated from his principal's instructions, and the principal is not bound by the agent's commitment, for he can contend, I appointed you to act for my benefit, not to my detriment. Thus, although Rav Papa successfully deflected Ravina's challenge, his ruling that the son-in-law is liable to a mishapara seems to be incorrect for a different reason, according to Tosafos.
Why are we so sure that the buyer and not the agent, the buyer didn't, why are we so sure that the agent got all the same instructions? It doesn't talk to that.
Right.
It just
We
says that,
assume,
what?
we're assuming that he would have.
We're
But-
assuming he would have.
Yeah.
But the agent didn't say it. Perhaps he wasn't.
But didn't we just say implicitly, if you're an agent, you consider it said?
Because the halacha told us that.
Yes.
But here's the argument that leads to that,
Okay.
right? I mean, I read the actual law. The actual law says we assume that he would have said it if it coming from the agent.
Okay.
Okay. Rabbi?
Okay, we continue till the end. Rav Ashi defends Rav Papa's ruling. Amalei, he said to Rav Acha, the son of Rava, Bitagra dezavin umizabe. Rav Papa is dealing with a case where the son-in-law was a merchant who buys and sells, and he was acting on his own behalf, not as an agent for his father-in-law. 18.
Father-in-law ordered the dowry from his son-in-law, who was a merchant. The son-in-law, in turn, ordered it from the sellers. Alternatively, the son-in-law originally ordered the dowry from the seller in order to be able to resell it to his father-in-law. Either way, in the transaction with the sellers, the son-in-law acted on his own behalf. He is therefore liable to a mishapara if he retracts, according to Rashi.
Does everybody remember what the mishapara was? It's
I was trying to look it up in the back and I didn't see it.
It's
so,
there, I saw it, but I didn't get it.
so you
Ah.
get censured. You get censured. If acquisition has not occurred and you
Ah,
retract, and it can only happen by the court, the Beit Din, the
Ah.
house, the court. So you would go to the court, and the seller who was harmed would go to the court, and the buyer who tried to retract would be subject to a censure. I'm not
Would
sure.
that get him back any of his money, or is it just simply a slap on the wrist?
That's the part I don't understand. I don't know what the censure does to the person. I think we studied it and I don't remember it. At some point, that censure has has to be something bad because it comes directly from the court. But I'm not sure what that means. So hopefully we'll see that again.
Okay,
It is in the glossary if you're interested.
Yeah, I looked for
I
it
didn't-
twice and I couldn't find it and I just found it. You know,
yeah, it is there, but it just, I think my question is the relevant one. Yeah, okay, they can censure him. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's my point. I don't know. And,
Yeah.
you know, we really need to know what that means in order to have a better understanding of what's actually happening here. I mean,
Yeah.
we understand the machination. We understand that the censure is bad. Okay, so what does that do to him? You know?
Yeah,
And it can only happen to the person who retracts.
right. Which makes some sense. That I can understand totally.
And it only happens if acquisition has not occurred.
And it's not going to.
Well, it's not going to because it retracted, but if
Right.
the acquisition, the Kenyan has not occurred yet, then he is subject to a mishaper if he tries to retract.
Right. Okay.
Okay. All right. Mishnah.
By,
You may-
Ready
by,
for the Mishnah.
by definition, the censure is a formal public reprimand for an infraction or violation, and in the United States is a formal public group condemnation of an individual running contrary to a group's acceptable standards for individual behavior. So it's a public recognition of their poor behavior,
In other words, a slap on the wrist.
but it would make it difficult to do business with that person in the
That's
future.
true. That's true. This would be like a nasty thing at the Better Business Bureau or some such. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Now remember, this is only the buyer. So you're not. So the businessman would have to know that that buyer was on some sort of blacklist.
Yeah. Okay. That would be the punishment, so to speak.
Thanks, Scott. Okay,
Okay.
Rabbi Mishnah.
Ready?
Hit it.
Malva Adam et Arisen Chitin. A person may lend his share back to sharecropping.
A sharecropper is a tenant farmer who works someone else's land and shares the crops with the landowner. Generally, the landowner would supply the seed, and his sharecropper's portion of the crops represented his pay for his work. However, in some cases, the sharecropper himself supplied the seed, in which case the crops were essentially his, since they grew from his seed. In this case, the landowner's portion of the crops was his rent for his field.
Okay.
Okay. Wheat, the chitin for repayment if the harvest of the same amount of wheat.
This is a case of commodity loan, a siak for a siak. Such loans are generally prohibited because the price of the commodity might increase in the interim, and consequently the lender will receive more value than he lent, which constitutes rebus. Nonetheless, the Mishnah here permits such a loan by a landowner to his sharecropper if the landowner specifies that the wheat is to be used to seed his field. The Gemara will explain the reason, according to Rashi.
It was 20.
Zara. When the wheat is advanced, it is to be used as seed, aval lo lechol. Not when it's advanced for eating, though. 21.
If the landowner did not specify that the wheat must be used to seed his field, and the sharecropper can therefore use it for food, the loan is forbidden, it being a usual case of a siak for a siak.
Oranges.
Shahaya Rabban Gamliel. It's necessary to stress the legality of such a loan because Gamliel used to act strictly on the matter. Malvet Arisi. The chitin, bechitin. That is, he used to lend his sharecroppers wheat for repayment of wheat. The Zara and specify that the loan was to be used as seed. Yokeh v'hulu. And yet, if he lent them the wheat when it was expensive and it became cheap before the due date, or bezol, the whose crew, or if he lent them the wheat when it was cheap and it became expensive for the due date, Notel Mehen Kashar Hazol. He would always take from them repayment at cheap price.
He advanced them an amount of wheat worth a certain value at the current price. If the price fell or rose before repayment, he would always take from them either the original amount of wheat he lent or wheat equal to the original price of that amount, whichever was less. Thus, if the price fell, he would take from them only the same amount of wheat as he loaned them, although he would be receiving less value. Alternatively, if the price increased, he would accept from them only an amount of wheat equal to the value of the wheat he loaned, although he would be receiving less wheat.
So here's another case that the rabbis had a side hustle, right?
Hardly ever hear that term in relationship to a rabbi, but yes.
Yeah, yeah. Below Nipnei Shalacha came, but he acted in this manner not because the halacha is so. Ella she'ratzah lachmir alatzmo. He wished to be stringent with himself.
The halacha is, as stated earlier in the Mishnah, that the landowner may take back the amount of wheat he loaned, even if its price increased in the interim. The reason is given in the Gemara. Rabban Gamliel, however, so as to distance himself from anything that bore a semblance to riddus, acted stringently and did not accept the full amount of wheat when its price increased. So, by virtue, isn't the sharecropper taking ribbis?
That's a good point.
I don't know.
That's a very good point.
Well,
The
there's
Gemara-
excess, right?
The
And
Gemara will probably argue that. That's a really good point. Because he's
Yeah,
not,
you made a point too, Marty, and that this being another example of rabbis having side hustle explains why it's so much more easily understood that on the seller's side or the businessman's side, it's much more restrictive or much more easily understood compared to the buyer's side.
right.
So they were trying to keep that fence up.
Holding themselves to a higher standard in order to ensure that nothing looked bad.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Well,
Where's Marianne?
but you raise a good point, Arlene, and they're gonna have to explain that later.
yeah,
'Cause, you're right.
I'm sure they will, Marty. I'm sure they will. They always seem to.
Ribbis.
Marion's gone upstairs to get her teeth brushed.
Okay. No problem. Gemara cites a brisa that elaborates on the subject of the Mishnah. Tana Rabbanan, rabbis taught in a brisa this: Malve Adam et Arisav Pitin. First may lend the sharecropper's wheat a pitin for repayment of the same amount of wheat. The zera, when the wheat is advanced to be used as seed. But Medvar Morim, when does it apply? Shelo Yarad. Only if the loan is advanced when the sharecropper has not yet entered the field and started working on it. 24.
before the sharecropper starts working the field, the landowner can still retract from the sharecropping agreement. As in other cases of employment, beginning to work on the job consummates the agreement and makes it binding. Until the agreement is binding, the loan is permitted.
24. Aval Yarad. But let's say if he had already entered the field and started working on it, also, it's forbidden to advance the loan.
Once the sharecropping agreement is binding, the loan is forbidden. The Gemara will explain the reason for this shortly.
Marcy, you're up next page. Neil, Scott. Scott, oh, you there still, Scott? Okay, well. Okay. The Gemara is asking, "My shna tana dida delo kamafli." Why is it that our Tana, the Tana of the Mishnah, that is, permits the loan and does not differentiate between Yarad or between Lo Yarad, between where the sharecropper entered in the field and where he didn't? Whereas the outside Tana of the Brisa does differentiate between Yarad or between Lo Yarad, where the sharecropper entered the field and where he didn't enter it.
Rabbi, you're muffled somehow.
Yeah,
Yeah, it seems to happen when you hold the bottom of the phone in your lap.
Okay, let me see. Is it better now?
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, much better.
Okay. The Gemara answers 74b4. Amar Rava. Rava said this. Rav Idi Aspara Nehale. He said this to me. Ba'atra de Tanan Didan. In the place of our Tana, the Tana, Arisa Yahiv Bizra. The custom was that the sharecropper supplied the seed. Bein Yarad or Lo Yarad. Therefore, whether he entered the field or whether he didn't enter it, Kamalo Yahiv Bizra. As long as he has not supplied the seed, Matzi Masalek Le, the landowner can dismiss him. 26. Who's up?
Me?
Marcia Scott.
Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Marcy.
The agreement does not take effect until the sharecropper brings the seed in accordance with the custom. Until he does so, the landowner may dismiss him, even if he has started working, such as by plowing the field, according to Rashi.
Oh,
The key kanakit. That's when he engages himself. 27.
Literally, when he goes down into the field.
Biatra de Tanabara. On the other hand, in the place of the outside Tana, the Tana of the Brisa, Mari Ara Yahiv Bizra, the custom was landowner supplied the seed. 29.
Are we at 28?
Yeah, I thought we were doing 20. We never haven't done 28 yet.
Yeah, it's
In
28.
fact, engages him for less than the regular rate. I thought we did 20. Okay, 28.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, before a sharecropping agreement is consummated, the parties may make up any terms they wish. Thus, in a place where it is customary for the sharecropper to supply the seed, he may offer the landowner more favorable terms if the landowner supplies the seed. If, for example, a sharecropper regularly takes 50% of the produce, he may offer part of his share to the landowner if the latter supplies the seed. Now, in our Mishnah's case, since the sharecropper did not supply the seed as per local custom, the sharecropping agreement did not take effect when the sharecropper began working the field. The agreement is therefore open for restructuring. Hence, the agreement that the landowner supply the wheat for seeding and be repaid by the sharecropper after the harvest is not viewed as a loan, but as a new sharecropping agreement, with different terms than usual. In consideration of the landowner supplying an amount of wheat, the sharecropper offers to deduct that amount from his share of the produce and add it to the landowner's share. For instance, a landowner supplied 10 kor of wheat, and the field yielded 100 kor. Under normal circumstances, when the sharecropper supplies the wheat, the sharecropper would take 50 kor. In this case, however, he allows the landowner to deduct 10 kor from his share, and he takes only 40 kor, according to Rashi. Of course, all this applies only when the wheat was advanced to be used specifically for seed in the leased field. If, however, it was advanced for general use, for example, for eating, its advancement bears no connection to the sharecropping agreement. It is rather a loan and is prohibited as stated in the Mishnah because it constitutes a loan or of a seah for a seah.
So, Biatra de Tana Para. On the other hand, in the place of the outside Tana of the Brisa, Mara Ara Yahiv Bizra. The custom was that the landowner supplied the Bizra, the seed.
Generally, the custom in the locale of the Tana of the Brisa was that the landowner supplied the seed for the sharecropping undertaking. However, in this particular case, the landowner felt that his field was better than most, and he was therefore entitled to more favorable terms. Accordingly, he asked the sharecropper to supply the seed, according to Rashi.
Welcome, Sharon Peters. Hope you're feeling better. Okay. Elo, Yarad. Therefore, if the sharecropper has not yet entered the field and started working, the matzeh masalik leg, in which case the landowner can still dismiss him and the loan was arranged then. 30.
Before the sharecropper had started his work, when the agreement was not yet binding, the landowner stipulated to him that he must supply the seed, contrary to the general custom, and the landowner offered to lend him the wheat for that purpose, according to Rashi.
Wait a minute, in this case, the landowner is supplying the seed.
Yeah,
I guess, and the sharecropper is going to have to pay him back at some point, probably with wheat at a later date. But I'm not sure how that's different.
Yeah, I think it's saying that the landowner understands that his land is prime acreage for growing of the wheat, and that although the local custom is that the landowner supplies the seed, because the sharecropper hasn't gone down into the field yet, they are still in negotiation.
Yeah, but in this case, the landowner is supplying the seed. It's because the last part, and the landowner offered to lend him the wheat for that purpose, for seed. So I'm not exactly sure how this is constituting a different case. Which I assume what it's trying to do.
Yeah, so I think they split that after note 28. On the other hand, in the place of the outside Tana, the custom was that the landowner supplied the seed. So that's the custom. And the sharecropper had not yet entered the field to start working, in which the landowner could still dismiss him. And so they were in negotiation.
That much I got.
Yeah.
That much I got. Okay.
Y'all a little bit? Okay. Okay, let's finish this page.
That was 31, I think.
That was 30, I think, right?
Oh, 30, you're right.
30.
Sorry, 30.
30, Neil. Kika nachit follows that when the sharecropper engages himself, he in effect engages himself for less than the regular rate. 31.
31. Since all the arrangements are made before the agreement is consummated, the parties are at liberty to arrange whatever terms they wish. Thus, when the loan is specified for seeding the field, it simply constitutes a sharecropper agreement with different terms than usual and is permitted as above, according to Rashi.
Erod, if however, he's already entered the field and started working, the loan matzeh masalik lay, in which case the landowner can no longer dismiss him. The loan is arranged, asur, it's forbidden. 32. Last note on the
Once the sharecropper has started working without the parties having made any special arrangement, his tenure is understood to be in accordance with local custom. Thus, by right, the landowner should supply the seed, and he cannot dismiss the sharecropper. In this particular case, however, the sharecropper agreed to supply the seed in exchange for some reward or incentive offered him by the landowner. Additionally, since he did not have any seed, the landowner agreed to lend him the seed to be repaid after the harvest. This is forbidden because it constitutes a loan of a seah for a seah. It cannot be construed as part of the sharecropping agreement because the agreement was already binding per the local custom. Any new favorable terms offered to the landowner by the sharecropper constitute a reward for the loan of the wheat and are therefore forbidden, according to Rashi.
Brisa discusses seah for seah loans. Tana Rabbanan, rabbis taught. Omer Adam Lachavero, person may save his fellow. What do you want to say? 75A1. Who can read the notes? Scott, finish up.
That's
Lend me
me.
a core of wheat, a kotzil adamim, and fix a price with him.
The core should be assessed at its present value, and the borrower should promise to pay back that amount in cash. Thus, any problem of ribis is avoided because even if the wheat appreciates in value, he pays back only the cash value of the amount he borrowed.
Okay. Who's noten lochitim? If wheat then became cheaper, he gives him back the same amount of wheat, too.
The core of wheat he gives back is worth less than the core he borrowed. The Gemara will ask immediately why the lender has to accept less value than he lent, when the borrower had promised to pay him the cash value of the wheat.
Who crew noten demehem? Became more expensive, he gives him back only their original value, demehem.
Is not allowed to give back a core of wheat because it would constitute ribis.
Ribis we know is a no-no. The Gemara asks the halo katzatz. But if he fixes what if he fixed the price for the wheat? Why does the lender have to accept a cheaper core?
The lender should be permitted to demand the amount of money they fixed. Although the core is now worth less, there is no question of ribis if he pays him back the cash. Since they fixed a cash value, the loan is essentially one of cash, only that cash itself was not advanced, but rather its value in wheat.
So, with that, the Gemara answers. Amar Rav Sheshet. Sheshet says, Haki Kamar, this is what the Brisa says, 5.
Rav Sheshis amends the Baraisa so as to contain two parts. The first part teaches a permitted method of borrowing a core. One should fix a value on it and promise to pay back that amount, regardless of whether the price of wheat falls or rises. Rav Sheshis now proceeds to explain the second part of the Baraisa.
Ilo katzatz, if he didn't fix the price, 6.
These words, if he did not fix a price, have to be added into the Baraisa. The Baraisa in its second part teaches the law for a case in which a core was borrowed without it being assessed, on the understanding that a core would be returned in violation of the ribis laws. The Baraisa teaches how the repayment should be made.
Okay. So, who's lo noten chitab? And if wheat became cheaper, the lender could take back his wheat, same amount of wheat as he lent, number 7.
Since the core became cheaper, there can be no question of ribis. The Baraisa also teaches that the lender may not demand the original cash value of the core. Since the agreement was for a core, he is not entitled to more than a core. Indeed, if the borrower would give back the original cash value, it would constitute ribis, because he is returning more than he is obligated to pay. Of course, if the price of wheat stayed the same, the borrower can certainly give back a core, although in the first place, the arrangement was forbidden.
Okay, to conclude the last thing then. Who crew noten demehem? Became more expensive, the bar gives back only their original value. Last note today, 8.
He is not allowed to give back a core, which is now more expensive because it would constitute ribis. He should pay back cash amounting to the original value of the core. Alternatively, if he wants to pay back with wheat, he should pay less than a core. The amount of wheat that at the current price is worth the original value of the core. Although he has already violated the law by entering into an agreement in the first place, this is not a license for further violation by paying back a full core.
Okay.
So thank you guys for coming in. Next week, I'll be going to see my aunt in Shelton. So I won't be here. Marty's going to lead the class of those who aren't going. Week after is Purim. Marty, so you're going to come with us to Chabad? I know Scott's coming. Marcy's coming. Are you going to come to Chabad, or you want to lead the class instead on Purim?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
I've got to muster the troops and see who wants
Okay.
to come.
So we'll see in 2 weeks what Marty decides to do. So, and then we'll play it by ear with that. Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good week, everyone.
Okay.
I go put some
Yeah.
kiddos down. Be right back.
Neil, take care.
You too, all of you.
Bye,
See
Stay
you
Morris.
healthy.
again.
Have a
Stay
good week.
healthy. Regards to Dory.
Thanks, Morris.
Will do.
Scott, Oh, he went to, I'll have to tell him when he gets back on.
Yep, you caught me for a second.
Oh, Scott, before I go to, I'm gonna probably leave around 10:30, 10:15 to go to, Westport tomorrow.
Yep.
So if you want, I'll be in the office a little bit in the morning. I know you're meeting with Deanie. If you want to speak to me, whatever, about the YouTube channel, whatever, let me know. So,
Okay, got it. Yeah, I'll trying to shoot to be in for 9 o'clock so I can get the equipment set up, and then I don't know if Deanie's going to be. I don't know if tomorrow morning is the right time to talk to Deanie if she's going to be heading out at 11 o'clock.
oh, maybe not. Maybe not. So,
I'll feel it out, but my guess is that conversation will wait.
okay, fine. Yeah,
All right.
whatever will be. So appreciate all your efforts, and I'm glad we got the weekly going out. I hope everyone's happy with the Monday and Tuesday. Arlene's got the pamphlet going out. I'm going to give those out tomorrow. So I'm glad about that. Going to give some of them out also in my daughter's. If I get to see her tomorrow, I'll give her some flyers for at the Ezra Academy in New Haven too. So
Okay.
I'll give some of them out over there as well, maybe.
Yep.
So we'll
Yeah, let me
see.
know if you need me to print
Yeah,
anywhere else.
we'll see. We'll see what will be. Sharon, how you feeling?
Been better, unfortunately. And you know what? I don't know if my Zoom is going to work. I've been having a problem with it. But
Oh, really?
yeah. Like, can you see me? Because
I
my
see you fine. Yeah,
Right now, you're fine. You were flashing on and off for a little bit.
yeah, wasn't I?
you were.
Just
You were.
started like a couple days ago.
I hope you feel better.
Yeah, I hope you feel better.
You know, it's got to be temporary. I can't think of anything else because it started. It was the night that I took the shot, and this happened the last time too. It takes like a week for me, and
Well,
I'm
everyone's-
just
yeah, everyone's different when it comes to.
yeah. But it's better than getting shingles,
Well, that's true.
you know. As long as it's temporary, I'll go through it, so I don't get the actual shingles. It's fine.
Well, in the spring, I hope we can get together live, maybe when the weather's better by the lake. So.
Well, I'm working on that. I really am. That I would love to do that. It's
from
such a beautiful place to have class.
Get back from Israel, maybe the beginning of May, since I'll be gone 2 Tuesdays in April for Israel. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm working on that.
Okay, so I'll be back the 28th of April. I'll be gone from the 17th to the 28th, Monday, Thursday. So Monday to the following Thursday. So.
The 17th through the 28th.
Yep. So maybe after that we can find a time where by the lake. So.
I'm gonna I'm working on it.
Yep. Working on it. So see what happens. So.
Are you still going next Tuesday? Or are you still trying to get
I'm
people
tried.
out?
Now. Going? You want to go with us, maybe, or what do you feel?
As
You
long
don't
as
have.
I feel all right. As long as I feel all right. What is it? Tell me what it is again. It's down in Shelton, right?
I asked her to speak about her experience in the Holocaust. She was in Czechoslovakia. She was hidden. Then she went on the kinder transport to England.
Oh. So it's kind of like what Henny and Bob used to do.
Well, yeah, she speaks to people, yeah. And you know what? So that's what she does. He's only one of my relatives that was in the Shoah in the Holocaust. None of everyone else in my family was out of the Holocaust. So there's no one else to speak really. My grandparents on both sides were smart enough to leave Poland in the late 1920s. So. Which otherwise I might not be here.
Is that how your parents met?
My parents met? No, my parents met. It was set up by my mother's dentist.
Kidding. I didn't know that.
17 when she got married. Yep. My mother was a young mother for me. My grandfather gave my mother help in the house because my mother was only 17 when she had me.
She was only 17? I didn't know that.
She was a teenage mom. That's why it was good, because when I listened to rock and roll, she and I weren't that many years apart, 17 years apart. So when I
Are
was
you
listening,
the oldest in your family?
yeah, when I was listening to the Beatles, she was listening to the Beatles too. So,
That's very cool.
well, I was tell you the truth, Sean, I was kind of embarrassed because in my family, most of the in school, most of the mothers were a lot older than my mother. So my mother was the young one. So like when I was in like first grade, my mother was only like 23. So
See what's happening?
Whoa.
Yeah.
What do you see on your screen? What do you see yourself, don't you?
I see myself sideways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's weird. I'm gonna see
Oh,
if, oh, there it is. I don't know what's going on with my Zoom. But I'm gonna try to stay awake. I promise.
Rebels have a rebel. Dana's here to keep her awake.
So,
Right. Wait a minute.
how well
What's
did
going
you
on
know-
over there?
how
With the
well
dog?
how well did you know Karen Gambilotti?
I knew her very well. She was the Hebrew school chair for over 15 years when I was working in the principal in the Hebrew school. Her kids all taught in the Hebrew school in the K through 2. So I knew her very well. She was the Gabbai and came to every Shabbat morning service for over 15 years. So I knew her very well. I knew Karen very well. She was on the board for 25 years.
Was she
So-
sick?
She
Was she ill?
she was sick during the last 3 months. So anyway, I didn't know about it, so we didn't say Misha Berach. I didn't know she was sick. So
Did anybody know? Did she?
yeah, about 6 or 7 people knew, but they didn't. Hey, Jen, but yeah, they knew, but they didn't tell me. They were sworn to secrecy. I guess she wanted to. To tell you the truth, I think she thought she was going to beat it. So that's why I think she didn't want to tell anyone, because I really thought, from what I hear, that she thought she was going to beat this thing, and it was only going to be a temporary setback. So it wasn't.
Hi, Jen.
Jen, good to see you again, Jen.
Hello.
How you doing up in Buffalo?
We're doing okay, though there's supposed to be an ice storm coming.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
we heard you were gonna get clobbered with ice rather than.
Yeah, not yet, but tomorrow evening, I think it's supposed to start.
Wow, we've been
We got
lucky,
nothing.
Jen. We
Lucky for you.
No, I want a little bit of white stuff. I don't want a lot, but I want to see
Oh,
some.
I'd be fine with 0.
we've had 8 here. It's the lowest ever in the history of Hartford. 8 inches for the whole winter.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't get much.
I'm kind of hoping that somehow it just passes by. We just don't get it, but not likely.
No, it's not like, I'm sorry to tell you, after watching the Weather Channel, Tom and I just looked at each other and said, oh, dear God.
Jen, it's a message. You got to come down to us closer here.
Exactly. You have to
Yeah.
move to Connecticut.
It's a message
Someday.
from Jennifer.
Now, that would be like up.
No, from Buffalo is
It's
Connecticut.
over.
It's over.
Oh, it's over. Shows you how well I am in geography.
Oh well.
Was due west. Look at you. So
I know.
What is happening?
I
there?
don't know what's happening. I may just.
Darren is going berserk over there.
I-
Like the movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Everything Everywhere All at once.
It's
Sharon,
Not only is she going berserk,
Crazy.
but every
What
once in a while, you're across the
Pretty
screen.
like
that way.
everybody.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like that.
Me,
Yeah.
It started last Thursday. I'm gonna stop my video. I'm here.
What if we put the photo up?
Yeah,
There we go.
I'm here. Just, that stopped it. I can see all of you. That's unbelievable. And I don't even know what to do. I don't know if I should call Zoom. I don't know what I should do. It's never happened before.
I think
On
well,
the,
I don't know.
anyway, Jen, I'm just
Yes,
telling
sir.
you, we don't have to necessarily finish all the letters this week. It's just that next week I'll be away because my aunt is
Right.
speaking about an hour away from here on the Holocaust, her
Right.
child experiences, and the week after is Purim, so I won't be
Of
here
course.
Purim party.
Right.
So
And
that,
then after that, you're doing Shaviti. And I did find another Shaviti,
thank you.
which is actually a lovely one with like names of God, like, let's see, that says, Harachaman, the compassionate one, Shekhinah, Ruach HaOlam.
Yeah, it's hard to see it on the screen here.
Yeah, but maybe it's the one like I've been looking for years, literally, and it turned out it was on the back of a sheet in a weird color. So maybe I'll make a photocopy of it, and then take a picture of it and scan it, and then I can send you both of them because I know you had said you were going to do Shaviti in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
I can also tell you the source.
yeah,
Um,
Shaviti in a few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and when I was thinking about it, I know we've got like, if we do go through all the letters, we actually talked about some of the letters already. Like we actually talked about Ein when we were talking about the word Shalom.
Right. Yes.
We've
yes.
talked about Tav, and we talked a little bit about Chin. So the last week we finished up Nun. So, I'm happy just starting with Samach if
Yeah. Wherever you want to start.
somebody's
We were so lucky to have you, Jen.
Oh.
Wherever you want to start is fine.
really, it's an honor
Wherever
to
you-
be here.
Yeah,
I
thank
really do
you.
appreciate it. So since we know that I can't seem to figure out how to share my screen, and I still have not figured that out, I may need to call Zoom myself at some point, or somebody else, and figure out my privacy settings. So
Oh, Dan, can you share the screen tonight?
Yes, one moment. I was just pulling up the document too, so.
and I will pull up my notes that I just had in my hand and have since, there we go. Okay, Sama.
Okay, we got the Psalm.
All right, thank you. All right. Okay. So Samach is basically the physical becomes the spiritual, becomes the physical. And it doesn't show up quite so strongly. That's weird. But if you look at the two hands, like one's red and one's more purpley, so that's kind of the idea where red is kind of the physical and the purple is the spiritual. So it gets back to that same idea of life is a never-ending circle. Divine support is always available to us. The universe within and the universe without is one. So connecting with the divine in the spiritual realm results in support in the physical world, and performing acts in service of the divine to become one with God, create the support structure that facilitates further holiness in our world and the world above. So that's kind of the gist of Samach. What else can I tell you? So it's that idea of Somach Noflim, divine support, that's always available. And so whether we start at the center and move outward, like when you think of a mandala, like a lot of what we've talked about is that idea of the sacred circle, takes us to the center or reflects back to us the center. So if you look at that tiny dot
in the middle of the Samech. That's that divine spark again, and whether you start there and move out to the outer part of the Samech, or you start at the Samech and move back in, there's always this relationship and balance between inner and outer. And so that's what Samech is constantly reminding us of, is that never-ending cycle between the inner and the outer, between the physical and the spiritual. So anybody have anything they want to add to that?
Jen, can you just tell me again why the hands are different colors? Why the one on the
so
right?
the idea, it was sort of the idea of support. So that's sort of, like they're holding the Samech, and I made one of them red. It's like if you think of the colors of the chakra, and the root chakra, is red. And then as you move up the chakra and the energy, you get to violet would be more spiritual. So if you move through, the chakra system, and I think I did it on, I'm going to go look, because I think En Vav kind of moves through that. Okay. So the idea, no, I didn't really do it on Vav. But if you think of the chakra system, where the root chakra is red, and then the sacral chakra is orange, and then the solar plexus is yellow, and the heart chakra is green, throat chakra is blue, and then the third eye is, indigo, and then, or violet, and then the crown is white. So if you kind of think of that, so the idea is, you're moving from the denser to the more spiritual energy, right? So the idea was that this idea of support is this balance between physical and spiritual. So that's why I made the hands different colors, and the palms are white, to show that kind of spiritual essence of energy that's there in all. Did that help?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. I actually thought that dot in the middle was part of how sometimes you can look at a blackboard, and then there are little dots because it's part of the board itself. I didn't realize that dot played a part.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of relates back, when you think about all the letters in the Hebrew alphabet that have that, dot in the center, and then you think back to Gimel, where we had that spark in the center, it turns out that it shows up a lot in my, let's see, right there in the very center is that spark. And so it is in this case intentional to remind us of that center point, that stillness within, that reference, and when you look at a circle, it takes you to the center, and it reflects back to your own core, your own center.
Interesting.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I wanted to just point out something about the Samech. I like about the inner and the outer world with the circle. It's really powerful. But if you look at the first letter of Samech, it's like so. So what we're doing here when we have the Kabbalah class is different than a regular Torah study.
Right.
We try to look at the secrets of the Torah. And when I think of the sentence from Devarim, Deuteronomy, Alohu kamasi madi chaton botzrotai, is it not stored away with me, sealed in my treasures? The word kamas, if you look at it, stored away, it's the same letters as Samech backwards. So I think what we do in our classes here is we're trying to look at the sod, the hidden part of the Torah, and why was this Torah hidden away from us? Because of the sin. We're still paying the price because of the sin of Adam. Adam's sin, unfortunately, we have to still pay the price. So I like the fact that we have a group that is interested in studying the secrets, the sod of the Torah, from the word kamas, which is backward from Samech, so we can find a way to rectify the sin of Adam.
And what does kamas mean?
Oh, what does it mean? Stored,
Stored,
stored away,
stored away, like hidden away.
hidden away. So it's hidden. Yeah, that Torah is hidden from us, and it's up to us to try to uncover it, not at the surface, but we have to delve in level to find it.
Okay, that makes sense. That's that little dot.
Yeah.
Wait, I just want to write down that that's like samach spelled backwards. Okay, I'm ready for Ein whenever you all are.
Okay, bring it on.
Okay, so we talked about Ein before as insight consciousness, opening our eyes, as in opening your third eye. So remember when we talked about Shema and the idea of hearing and listening, it wasn't listening necessarily with our ears as much as going in and listening. So that's the idea behind Ein, is turning our vision inward toward God to see God more clearly. So becoming conscious of something at that deeper level, deeper than the ordinary physical existence. And as we raise our level of consciousness, the hidden aspects of the divine are revealed. So through opening our consciousness to God, we deepen our spiritual roots and begin to understand that everything is a manifestation of the tree of life. I'm not sure if there's anything else. That's probably it. Eighth time. So here's actually a really good example of the chakra system, right? Red at the bottom, orange, yellow, green, blue,
Yeah.
purple, right? So if you took the red and you took the purple, those are the two hands that kind of were holding the samach in the previous one. And again, you've got that dot in the middle of this image. Not that there's a dot in the middle of Ein, but that dot in the middle that reminds us to just keep going inward and inward. And if you go inward, you connect to Torah, you connect to Eitz Chaim, you connect to Hashem.
In some ways, the dot is in the middle, though. If you come to the bottom of where the two trees separate, and that's where my eye went first when I looked at this picture. So that could basically be symbolic of, you have to have a point to have an intersection of two lines. You have to have a point. So really and truly, that would be the point, and that would be the dot.
Right. And all I meant by there wasn't a dot is Ein isn't one of the letters that has, like that, it's not a double letter like bet vet or pay fay, where you add that dot in to distinguish between the two.
Right.
But yes, we're constantly, being reminded that we have these intersectionality that even in how the letters are formed. Anybody have anything?
Yeah, I wanted to say Ein, it consists of the Ein letter that you drew, and it has the letter Vav and Zion that it's consists of. So if you take Ein, Vav, and Zion together, it's Oz, which
it's what?
It's all O's, Ein, Vav, and Zion together, the two letters plus the Ein that it consists of. So Oz means giving us strength. Oz is strength. So in order to give us strength in this world, we have to understand the God's will. And the only way we can do it, the best we can, is just, it's a beautiful thought, because we studied the oral law and we're studying the written law. So the best way to learn it is with the two Vav and the Zion. Surrounded by O's strength, you have to look at the two ways that we can study Torah. One's written and one's oral. Together, then when we do it in unison, we can better understand God's way.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything they want to add?
I wonder if the corporation at CBS knew how much the I is. Oh,
Oh, CBS.
Wonder if they know how deep
I think they might have. Yeah.
their eye goes.
No, that's what
So,
you have, Jen. I really think of that eye. I just love looking at the eye, like
yeah.
the eye constantly watching us from above. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And the colors are great. It's like an all-inclusive.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
You know, if you-
yeah.
Yeah, and I think it takes us back to like that idea with Lamed, in particular, and probably some of the other letters that I just can't think of at the moment, that, you know, you get to that inclusivity, that, you know, that reminder of it's not just the physical world, or it's not just emotional, or it's not just mental or spiritual. Like, integration is all of it. So to be like deeply grounded in the spiritual world, and, you know, deeply grounded in Torah and all of that, is to not just study it as an intellectual thing, or not just, you know, go out and do mitzvot mindlessly, but, you know, you have to have the kavanah, and you have to like really be deeply rooted and grounded in all the ways. So I'm ready if you all are. We can move on to pay.
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Trudy.
Okay, so pay, you think about the word peh, mouth. So pay is about speech, and speech comes responsibility and freedom. And you can't have freedom without responsibility. So we create our reality through our thoughts, words, and actions, both individually and collectively. And it's through our thoughts, words, and actions that we can surpass our limitations. So freedom comes when we responsibly use our words, verbally and non-verbally, to raise ourselves up. So what I mean by that is, we often think about the words that we say out loud, but non-verbally, you know, we're also having conversations with ourselves in our head all the time. And, you know, every once in a while, when I say something like that, I have people say, like, what are you talking about? And it's like, you know, what did you just hear inside your head? You know, like, usually there's a dialogue going on. So the way we move out into the world and manifest our reality is through our thoughts and words. So first we have an idea, you know, in our head, and then maybe we say it, and then maybe we take an action, right? That's kind of the way that we create. So all action begins with thought. And it's not enough that we think our thoughts. Pei actually teaches us to speak them consciously with intention. So through God's speech, the letters came into being and creation occurred. So whether we speak aloud or keep our thoughts to ourselves, we're creating a world through speech. And as reflections of the divine, our speech can be imbued with divine essence, and we too have that power to create. So it's incumbent on us to speak carefully, thoughtfully, intentionally. So we have the ability to use speech to raise ourselves up out of our physical limitations, to, you know, enter higher realms of spiritual existence. Judaism teaches us, you know, to do this, like, before performing an action, whether it's big or small, you know, we're taught to take that moment and offer a blessing, right? So, and there's a practice of saying 100 blessings a day. So the reality is, if you're going to say 100 blessings a day, starting from the time you wake up till the time you go to sleep at night, that's basically every 10 minutes you're saying a blessing. So that's really about being mindful and taking that ordinary reality and making it extraordinary, elevating it. So it's like not enough, and Judaism teaches it's not enough to offer the blessing silently. Blessings are supposed to be spoken out loud. So this action of offering a blessing out loud does two things. First, by taking the moment to reflect before the act is elevated from ordinary to extraordinary. It's elevated to a sacred level through that connection with the divine. And so then the act is a holy one, even if it's something as basic and life sustaining as eating, right? Or drinking or sleeping or walking. So by taking that time to be consciously aware of what we're doing and grateful for the opportunity that we can do it, we raise both the action and ourselves into a holy connection with the divine. And secondly, by speaking the blessing out loud, we're engaging our power as co-creators, manifesting blessings and holiness in the world. So as we speak it, we help create more of it. And when we understand this divine power contained within each of us, we begin to open to the wonder, mystery, and beauty contained within ourselves. Actually contained within everything, ourselves, others, plants, animals, minerals, fish, birds, inanimate objects, mountains, oceans, clouds. Like we begin to see that like everything is one. You start to like see this synchronicity and coincidences, in things.
Right.
And then, so there's a story and that's what this is about. So there's a story that the world hangs in the balance between good and evil, love and fear, compassion and indifference. And every time we speak, we create an angel for one side or the other. So when we speak in kind ways full of gratitude, praise, and blessings, we create angels of goodness, love, and compassion. And we speak in hurtful ways, like, full of lashon hara, putting ourselves and others down, being negative and conflictual, we create negative angels and no one feels blessed. So spiritually speaking, bad speech creates feelings of negativity and ill will for all concerned, the speaker, the listener, and the object of the speech. So Pei speaks to us again of that idea of choice. And we have the freedom and the responsibility for the world that we create. So Pei asks us to speak kindly, wisely, and lovingly so that we create a world full of holy sparks, where all is in conscious connection with the divine. So that's Pei in a nutshell.
I'm seeing the form of what I think looks like a woman.
Yeah.
With her arm and her hand is holding something, and I'm not going to say she's kneeling, but
she is. So
kneeling, yeah. And
yeah,
then,
so that it's like the woman is sort of like turned in on herself a little bit. And
right.
So it was kind of the idea of so there's two things. So what she's holding, it's kind of like that ball of energy is in her heart. So you look at the circle in the middle that has the light like radiating out, the blue in the center, and then it goes up to the white. So it's almost like that is actually in her heart, or in the being's heart, male, female. But you're right. I think, as my friend Rabbi David Levy said, most of my work is, feminine centric. So looks like a woman, even when I don't try.
Feminine centric.
Yes. So the idea is, so like what I was trying to convey is that, in order to speak with that kind of kavanah and conscious intention, you need to speak from the heart. Like it's not enough to just be intellectual. You need to have it also be heart-centered. So it was like this sense of, to me, when I looked at the letter, it just kind of was like this sort of, I don't know, kind of like making this connection between, the head and the heart. And I remember when I was, this is going to sound really awful, when I was taking Melton, every week in the first year of Melton. Has anybody taken Melton?
No, what is it? Is it a?
It was like a year-long, like weekly class on Jewish studies. And it was phenomenal, actually. And there were 2 years of it, but the first year, I'm sure that this is like all on me, but this is what it felt like. It felt like the teacher said every single week, this is what everybody else did, and then this is what the Jews did. So this is what everybody else did, and then the Jews took it out of our hearts, put it in our heads, and that's why we're better. Because like we made it very intellectual and structured and whatever. So every week, like I would end Melton and say to my friends, this is what they did and this is what we did. We took it out of our heart, put it in our heads, and that's why we're better. And that like became like the joke. And it also became like for me, like the often disconnect in how I see Judaism practiced. It's like this very intellectual practice. And I often feel like what's missing is the connection to the ethics and the values and the heart and the how do we actually live it as a spiritual practice in our lives. And so for me, pay is kind of the way that says what we need to do is we need to connect it to our heart, and whether we're creating it with our thoughts, whether we're creating it with our words, whether we're taking it to that step of action, it needs to also be heart-centered. And if we're that kind of heart-centered, then throughout all of reality, whether it's the physical world, the mental world, the spiritual, emotional, like it will have that integrated place and that connection with the divine and that integration through the 4 worlds. And pay 1, 2, 3, 4 is another 4 world. It's another 4 world letter. It's got those 4 sides to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Another thing that I again, this is just the way I'm perceiving it, is that it looks like you included, the oceans and the earth, and you also included heaven and hell. It looks like fire to me on the lower right hand side.
So it was for me, it was the 4 elements. Right. It was the idea of the 4 elements. It wasn't so much heaven and hell, but
Fire.
But yeah. So it was fire, earth, water, and air. Just sort of in that empty space was air, I guess. I didn't really do air like I did, like in hay, I did air in a way where, it really looked breathy. And
At first I thought it was the sun and the moon, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because, there's black around the moon and that would represent the night sky, and there's a sun. But then I didn't know what to do with that black area, the grayish area above the ball, because that's not
so the grayish area above the ball is just like, how light radiates and it's not all the same level of intensity. So it was just kind of a way to
almost a shadow.
Yeah. So in Dalit, if you went back and looked at Dalit, it has the 4 elements with the air at the top, in this one. And Dalit and Pei are related in that sense of 4. Where Dalit is the 4th letter and 4,
To me, it's an emotionally heavy letter. Because you have to be introspective.
Yes.
To look deep inside of yourself.
And
Maybe
that's part of why, absolutely. Thank you so much. Because that is that head turned inward. I think that you just hit on what, and you said it much more eloquently than I could. But yes, it is not just about speaking out, but being introspective in your speech, and thinking before you speak.
The big problem around here. Everywhere.
Yeah. Yes. And if we really were able to live by, the lessons of the letters, it's, just as anything else with Torah, it's not really an easy practice.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of energy and strength sometimes to make what you think are the right decisions and to be able to talk about them.
Mhm.
So I see in the leg of the person almost a frown, which to me is the pensiveness of what this letter is about.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm Trudy, by the way,
Hi,
and I was
Trudy.
just,
Trudy.
hi, I'm enjoying this very much. Thank you so much, Jennifer. But for me, and I think we have something in common. I'm a child therapist. I deal
Uh-huh.
just with children, but for me, when I see this, I see that sometimes to speak the truth and to act truthfully
Uh-huh.
and to act with justice takes a lot of strength
Mhm.
and a lot of spiritual energy. That
Absolutely.
that it is a burden, but if it comes from your heart and you have the spiritual source, it's like, okay, you can do it. You can.
Absolutely. So can we switch to Sadi, because what you've both just said is so much evident in Sadi. That need for strength. Yep. So this is camel pose, right, in yoga. Has anybody ever done camel pose in yoga?
Yes.
Okay, so if you lean back too far, you fall over. If you lean forward too far, you fall over, right? So, and all of the balance in Sadi is in your thighs, right? So it's exactly what you're talking about, that to have that righteousness, the truth and the justice and the burden of all of that takes so much strength. I totally agree. And, if you ever wanted to try it, like when I teach kids, I always have us all get into this position and then move back and forth. It's like, even when you think about the idea of tzedakah and, you're not supposed to give more than 20%.
Right.
Why not? Right? You're not supposed to give more than 20% because if you give too much, you put yourself in the position of possibly needing the help that you're giving, right? You tip the balance, right? And again, if you're somebody, so you could be tipping the balance by giving too much. You could be tipping the balance by reaching out too much to get from other people. You could be tipping the balance by keeping it all for yourself. You could be tipping the balance by not giving enough and therefore sending the balance out of whack, in the community. So Tzadi has all of that. What else is there about Tzadi? So it's about, righteousness and humility and balance. And, even if you don't want to get on your knees and do it, even if you just kind of move forwards and back, you get a sense of there's a sweet spot, where you're not going to fall over too far. There's a sweet spot where you're not going to fall back. And that's what Tzadi is. It's that sweet spot about bending, but it's not bending in the same way that Mem was, where Mem was about surrender. Tzadi is about bending over backwards to help others, but it's about bending back in a way that opens our heart in service. So if you bend back, and you can feel your chest opening. So Tzadi is about performing acts of righteousness and loving kindness, and with the idea of being of service, of opening the heart, of connecting. So in order to do that, to connect, we have to do it in a way, we have to do these acts in a balanced and compassionate way. So while we're all expected to give and help others, and the idea is you can't do it all, but you have to do your part. we're never supposed to do it to the extent that we put ourselves out of balance. So the shape of the letter hints at the strength that's needed to live this path of righteousness that, Trudy, you were just talking about. It's to be on your knees, leaning back requires a lot of strength in your thighs, because if you lean too far, you're vulnerable to losing your balance and falling over. So there's a clue right there about right action, being open-hearted and performed from a place of humility that's measured and balanced. So when we do these actions out of a desire for recognition, then you're like trying to do it for your own benefit. So that's another way that you can be out of balance. It's like, hey, pay attention to me. Or false humility, like, oh, I'm not that important, right? Like all of that sets up an imbalance, and it's not coming from that place from the heart. So, and when we do it from places that aren't balanced that way, it separates us from the divine purpose. So then we're more in ego, and then we are in a place of service. So being truly humble is, one of the foundations for how we can live in the world in that balanced way, not false humility, but actual humbleness and humility. So when we perform acts of loving kindness out of a divine intention, then we're supported on the sea of love, and all good things come back to us. So it's the idea again that it's that cycle. So when we put good out into the world, good comes back to us. When we help others, it circles back and we benefit, not necessarily from the person that we helped, but, it's kind of an idea of pay it forward. So anybody have anything they want to add?
It also looks like, because, you can keep your balance by just being straight up, but you have this woman, I'm saying it's a woman.
It is.
Moving backwards, and you also have that white spot, which is right where the heart is,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're moving back and opening your heart.
Right.
And what it reminds me of is Aleinu, when we go Anachnu Korim Umishtachabim, and then Lifnei Melech. I always find that after I've bent,
Mm-hmm.
I bring myself up, and I don't just stand up straight. I lift myself to God and to the heavens and open up my heart to
Love
him.
that.
And that's what this reminds me of, is
Mhm.
what I love to do. Elena is my favorite prayer of all time.
I love that
And
connection.
this really reminds me of how I open myself up when I'm saying that prayer.
Mm-hmm. And I think you hit on something, because first you're bending, that's mem, that's that idea of surrender, that kind of egoless surrender, and then you lift up. So, if you think about mem as, you're bending forward and then you come back up, you again have that play of energy between those two letters.
I like it.
Anybody else have anything they want to add?
What are the stars? The
So
asterisks.
So it was like, so you're on the sea of love, and so I was thinking in terms of, it's Sadi. So I was thinking tzedakah, right? So it's the idea of I'm going to, do these things and give them out into the world, right? So those are all the stars that are blessing, they come from me, and I'm sending them out into the world, and then they go out, and then they fall down to the sea of love, and then this cycle comes back and feeds my soul and feeds my heart so that I can do it again.
Ah, okay.
So you look at the picture, it's hard to tell whether the person is giving or taking. But if they're in
because
the-
it's both.
right, and they're in the position of hopefully a good balance.
Exactly.
So I looked at it as giving and taking.
That's exactly right. And when you're in that balance, you are giving and taking. You are giving and receiving at the same time. And it's a natural cycle.
Because you need to receive too.
Absolutely. Because
Sometimes-
otherwise you're out of balance.
Right.
You know, because then you're not being fed.
And sometimes it's harder to receive than to give. Sometimes it's easier to give than to receive.
Yes. And sometimes it comes from really like interesting places. Like years and years ago, I was with I was doing a mother-daughter book club. So it was like moms and their 10 or 11-year-old girls, you know, daughters. And a couple of the women had become friends, you know, and I had become friends. And one of the women, her family was moving away. So there were 3 of us, you know, just in her kitchen. And I literally was starving at that particular point in my life. Like literally, I didn't have enough money for food. And so, and she knew I was really hungry. And she knew like she had nothing to give me except what was in her cupboard. And so she knew I kept kosher. So like the whole thing, like this whole thing was like a crazy scene. She was not Jewish. And she made pasta with shrimp because that's all she had. And she made it and she set it down in front of me. And we both looked at each other and it was like, was I going to eat it? Wasn't I going to eat it? And I ended up eating it because it was like, I knew it had like totally come from like the exact place of, you know, this. And, you know, I mean, other people might have made a different decision, but in that moment, like, it was like, I asked, God answered, this is how God answered. It was, you know, we both knew like everything about it was wrong and yet everything about it was exactly right. And, you know, I think, you know, when you say, I mean, you don't necessarily know where it's going to come from. And, you know, to me, that was one of those like, am I going to be, you know, strictly live by the law? Or am I going to say, hey, something else is opening up here and I'm going to follow this and see what happens? And, you know, I'm saying that that is not necessarily the right answer for anybody else.
I had in my early life a similar situation, but my mother told me that when someone does that, goes to that extent for you, then you eat it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't say, oh, I can't eat it, it's not kosher.
Right.
Because of the way and the love in which it was given.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and she knew while she was making it. I mean, she knew that I kept kosher because she'd been in my house. She knew all the rules and everything. And that was just, she literally had one can of baby shrimp. That was it. So, and I think that, you know, in so many ways is that idea of balance, you know, and that the answers are not always obvious. You know, the balance can be very intuitive.
Isn't it tolerance in a way too?
Absolutely. Yes.
You don't reject something because it's not the way you want it, or
right,
your, you know, your rules.
Mm-hmm.
I think we lack a lot of that in this world.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing that brings up is that, you know, as much as Sabi is that idea of flexibility and balance, I mean, strength and balance, it's also, and I think this shows up kind of in the waves. There's a lot of flexibility there. You know, there's a lot of like play and movement.
Well, I think also, you know, sometimes in life you can do what you perceive as a good deed or whatever, but the results aren't always immediate. So I think that, the waves maybe represent too, that it's not always, I'm going to do this and this is going to happen. It's an evolving thing. It may
Right.
be several acts or several interactions or several happenings before you see a result.
Mm-hmm.
That
And
it's
I think,
not,
yeah,
it's not linear is what I'm trying to
right.
say.
And I think, now that you say that, like, to me, I can see that also in the stars.
Right.
It's not just one, it's like this whole cascade of stars that
It's-
then falls into the sea of,
It's cumulative.
yes. Mm-hmm. So shall we move to Kuf? Which I don't remember if we talked about before.
I think so.
Well, we just hinted at it, Jen. We didn't cover it in depth.
Okay. So, all right, Kuf. So it's growth and holiness. So Kuf directs us to the spiritual nature of our lives, to act in ways that create sacredness, godliness, holiness, and to grow these characteristics in the world. So if we understand that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, then along with caring for all the matters associated with living the human life, we know that we have to attend to our spiritual development as well. And it's our purpose to strive beyond the ordinary. So when we think about growing, usually we think about physical growth or financial growth or intellectual growth. And all of that is definitely important to pay attention to, obviously. It's not enough if that's all that we're focused on, then we're missing out on, the purpose for life and living. So the shape of the letter gives us a clue. It's made of two separate and distinct parts that don't touch. So there's a there's a small space at the top and a larger space at the bottom. And this teaches us that we need to let all that drags us down, all that no longer serves, like, you just kind of let that drain off. And then and raise ourselves up to higher levels of consciousness. So again, you can see, like, we've got that alphabet, not the alphabet, sorry. We have that, the rainbow chakra. So it's the idea again of, if we let things drain off that no longer serve, then what that allows us to do is basically lighten our energy, enlighten ourselves, raise ourselves up, energetically. So that as we grow in this process of releasing, we create an open space within and a space for, the divine, for God, Hashem, to abide within us. And that's that kind of like blue, let's see, this part here, so you've got the top part of the Kuf, very stylized. And then, so that kind of bluish white light that's coming into the dark is that idea of God entering, we've opened up this space for God to enter within. So as we grow in spirit, releasing all that no longer serves or fosters our spiritual growth and development, we create this opening, and God, sensing our movement towards this positive connection, integration, wholeness, enters through that top space and grows within us. So as we consciously focus on growing towards God, God grows stronger within us. So again, you have that partnership that, kind of like, hey, where, God's hand reaches down and our hand reaches up, or like in bed where, you've got, we're the house in which God abides within. It's that same kind of thing. And so, this growth is a cycle with periods of vibrancy and periods of dormancy. So that kind of reminds us of Nun, where, you know, we had the idea of consciousness and unconsciousness, and you plant that seed, you know, and it takes time to germinate, and then it grows up. So, you know, so it's like we need to enter into that void, and that's that kind of black space in the middle there, and use our voice to cry out to God to help us out of whatever our affliction is, to a place of blessing. So that's kind of what that's about, is, you know, the more we let go of, the more open the space is, and the more connected we become in that empty space. Like that empty space really isn't empty, right? It's full of presence if we're open to it. And, you know, I've tried to convey that again through that use of color and that spiral. So in a way, that spiral that goes from the outer, you know, red to orange to yellow to green to purple, you know, to blue to purple, like it, you know, it's another one of those where if you follow that through, you know, it basically takes you up and into that black empty space where God is waiting, if that makes any sense at all. Okay.
I noticed that it doesn't touch the red or the orange.
I think that that's just because, you know, the shape of the letter is
Right.
such that, you know, that it doesn't.
It
You know, I
actually
don't think
touches the
that there
red a
was
little
any
bit.
conscious level on my part, you know. I mean, I just drew intuitively whatever I drew. So you're right, it doesn't.
It sort of touches the red a little bit at the point.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, yeah,
They
just
kind
at
of
that
come
very
together.
edge.
Yeah.
But it's still in the realm.
Yes.
It's
Right.
included. It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, because really that red and orange are kind of, you know, in that I wanted to make the space empty, but I mean, if you think about it, you know, that red does continue to the orange. So it's into that space and kind of through that space.
Yeah.
You know, so it's also like that idea of, you know, that growth is cyclical with phases of activity and phases of rest. So now I'm just speaking straight from the book. So through all of our cycles of lives, we aspire to grow in connection with God. So Kuf directs us, you know, to that spiritual nature of our lives, and the shape of the letter provides that clue, because it's got that top, you know, the top piece of the Kuf represents that attainment of holiness, kedusha, and the bottom element is our dynamic, like yearning, right? So, I mean, the letter, obviously, when the letter's actually written, it's a straight line. It's not curvy, but I tried to create it with that idea of growth. You know, when you see plants growing, you know, they kind of curve as they grow up. And so as we grow in spirit, you know, we create that space for God, which I also kind of think of as Shekhinah, you know, sensing our movement toward connection, integration, wholeness, you know, enters that space. So it's that idea of that small, still voice within, that Shekhinah dwelling within, you know, grows within us and towards us as we grow towards it, towards God.
I just wanted to point out, today is Rosh Chodesh Adar. Today is the new month of Adar, and what's great about Adar is we have the holiday of Purim. We have all these Purim programs coming up. I can't wait for the holiday. So the Ari, the holy Yitzhak Luria, he says that the letter of Purim is what? What letter? It's Kuf. Why Kuf? Because Kuf sounds, it stands for tzchok, to laugh. And in life, we just had a number of tragedies in my life, at least in one for the synagogue, that you have to find a way to balance life out with all the severity and all the seriousness. We all have to laugh. And yeah, that's why I'm glad we have Adar. When they say when Adar comes in, we're joyous. So we're joyous that we have, not only we have Jen here for the new month of Adar, but that we can laugh at life sometimes, because when life gets overwhelming to us, we can laugh and release the endorphins and be happy.
Amen. So we got 3 letters left. Let's race through them.
You don't have to race through them.
Race through them.
Erase through them. Good one.
Get a
We can
race
race through them. Okay, so Reish, if you think Rosh, head, so Reish is the cosmic container. Reish reminds us that all reality is in our head, Rosh in our emotion, in our perception. So, again, what we think is what we create, and how we experience things. So that whole center circle really is, it is fuzzy on purpose. It's kind of that idea of mental thought, and mental energy, and that energy is how we create our, sort of at the center of our world, and what we think and how we think, creates our world. So the divine essence is hidden within us and in our physical world. So again, you have, that sense of 4, right? And beyond. So you've got, you've got the ration, then basically squaring it to get you that idea of 4. So, taking us again through the 4 elements, you also have kind of a nod to the yin yang, with the white on one part and the black balanced on the other part. So you've got, consciousness, unconscious. So the idea is that, everything we do and everything that happens to us is an opportunity for us to connect with the divine. So everything is divine in essence, and it's up to us to notice that, to recognize it, to be aware of it. Which I will say on many days is a hard thing to do. We all, and that we always have a choice. Like the real choice is in how we choose to perceive the world, whatever our situation is, whatever's going on, right? Reish really is all about the story we tell ourselves. So things happen in life and we give them meaning with our interpretations. And if you change your mind, everything changes. So that's the idea of Reish. So it's the idea that our perception shapes our reality, whether that's individually or collectively. So does anybody have anything they want to add? Okay, then I guess we can go on to Shin. So
Isn't Reish the beginning of?
For a minute.
Well, I was on mute.
that's
I
okay.
was talking and I was on mute. But
Oh.
isn't that the beginning? Like when you say first, when we learn Hebrew, first, second, third, fourth, isn't Reish part of the first word for first?
Reishi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reshit Chochmah, Yirat Adonai. Yeah, the first thing, Judaism, fear
Okay.
God.
I was just curious. I didn't know if that had anything to do with the meaning of Reish, the fact that it is in the word first.
Well, yeah, first you have to think about it.
Because
Right?
Rosh is the head of
everything
the
is
month.
created, through, like, before you actually do anything, you have, whether you're conscious of it or not, you have a thought about it.
To me, the whole thing looks like a kaleidoscope, So if you're having a thought and you're right, it can change. You just turn it a little bit and your whole perception of an event or an occurrence can change. It actually looks like, a child's kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, and the idea is that, you know, we give our world meaning by our interpretations. So we always have a choice in how we perceive the world. And with that choice, again, we're back to that idea of responsibility. You know, so Reish basically obligates us to interpret our reality in ways that inherently, you know, sort of honors that inherent divine essence. Like when I think about it, like I just recently, like I asked a client of mine recently, like if you were unfettered by the burdens of ordinary reality, how would you live your life? And that's kind of like, in some ways, what Reish is about. It's like, you know, if you took the story of ordinary reality away, but you still had to be balanced and live ordinary life, you know, that's part of the message of Reish, is you still have to live ordinary life. But if you lived ordinary life, realizing that how you think about it creates the reality that you're living, and you chose to not be burdened by it and stuck in it, how would you live your life differently? Like, how would changing that perception change your life? So that's kind of the message behind Reish. Anybody have anything else they want to add?
So how do your life experiences change your life? Is that what you're?
Well, and how do your thoughts change your life?
Right. So I looked at this, and what I saw was the very center is what people who have had near-death experiences describe pretty much. They've been asked to follow a light. It's a pretty consistent theme in those kind of stories. And so if you're asked to follow that light, but you don't, I would imagine when you come back, you think differently.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
You do, yeah.
So,
It's true.
so in personal experience, when a car just slams right into you head to head, and you come through that, you think differently.
Yeah.
It's those moments of, I used to say, in order to create change, you have to sort of knock your head against the wall. You know, change doesn't come easy. There has to be some kind of a big catalyst that makes you take a different look. At least that's sort of my view.
And yes, that often is how we get to it. And I think what Rach says is you don't have to necessarily have that kind of cataclysmic experience if you understand that you have a choice in how you think. And through choosing different thought patterns, you can create a different reality. But you're right, a lot of people, I think, end up getting to it through a cataclysmic event or a near-death experience or something like that, you know, because I don't think, you know, we don't start teaching this, you know, like we should be teaching this to kids when they're young, like, you know, how to think, you know, and that how you think really does change your view of what's going on. Like you're telling yourself the story, you know, and we collectively are telling ourselves a story. You know, if we woke up tomorrow and decided, you know, we're going to tell a different story, the world would be a really different place. You know, like the country of Bhutan, I don't think it does anymore, but it used to have a Department of Happiness at a national level. Like the idea, you know, I mean, that was a really different story than the story we tell here. You know, and they had a different consciousness and, you know, people were happier, right? And so much of it is just, you know, what do you set as the the idea, the intention, and then do you live into it? And Reish says it all starts with the mind. So we have Shin and Tav, both of which we've touched on before. So Shin is conscious nourishment. So divine essence is like a flame. It's the spiritual fire that never dies. So we've seen it, you know, if you think of Gimel, which had that spark, and Gimel was 3. Shin is Gimel projected, you know, out into time and space. So it is that which feeds the spirit and nourishes the soul. So Shin signifies the sacred. So if you think about Jewish holidays, we light candles to distinguish between sacred and secular. At the beginning of all holidays, you know, we light the candle to remind us of the sacred essence and that we're entering into a holiness in time. And as we move through the world and these times with conscious intention, we experience greater opportunities for enlightenment. So, and now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking back to Gimel, and with Gimel, the image was the primary colors surrounding the letter, right? It was yellow, red, and blue. And with Shin, I have the secondary colors, the orange, the green, and the violet. You know, so again, it's that it's not the building blocks the same way as Gimel was. You know, Gimel is like that sustenance that you take within you, you know, that carries you. It's the building blocks for our world through all 4 worlds. Shin is you've mixed those building blocks together, you know, and now you're like creating sacred and you're creating secular and you're creating the differences. And, you know, Shin is kind of, you know, you've taken those building blocks and now you're creating that place of 10,000 possibilities. So I'm not sure what else to say about Shin. Anybody have anything they want to add?
Looks really peaceful with the sun in back of it. And when you think about the Shin and Shabbat, you know, it's a very restful time. And I just look at this, even though it looks like it's fire and the sun is fire, but just looking at the peacefulness of the colors around the circle and looking into the sun and seeing this beautiful letter coming up, just really reminds me of like Shalom is peace and Shabbat. Exactly. You know, it's very peaceful to look at this one.
Yeah, and that's definitely, you definitely hit on it, you know, like words like Shalom, Shabbat, Shekhinah, it's that idea of peace and connection within, connection to the sacredness, within and without. Okay, anything else?
Looks like the sun is setting. Like it's not in the center of
You're
the
right,
sun.
it is not in the center. That was not intentional. But if we think about Jewish holidays starting at sundown, it could be one of those unintentional and yet, you know, meant to be sorts of things.
Yeah.
And the letter itself has like that, like fiery kind of energy. You know, the way that I drew it. It's like 3 flames, sort of.
Yeah, 1/3 of a menorah.
Or as you know, Rabbi said a couple of years ago, shesh is shesh, right? So,
yep.
Number 6.
It's also my second Hebrew name, Shifra. So I guess I'm just a woman of peace.
You are.
I guess so, Sharon.
All right, so our last letter is Tav. Okay, so last letter of the alphabet, Tav represents finality and endings with regard to the physical realm. Tav is organic, living, growing, changing, representing the idea that truth, emet, is neither static nor concrete. So if you remember, we talked about emet as Aleph Mem Tav. It's the beginning, the middle, and the end of the alphabet. So Tav teaches us that what is true, the essence of life, that inexplicable, unimaginable, something that is present in all things continues on eternally. So from beginning to end and all the way through, truth exists. Tav is Torah, representing a living truth, universal law. In order to live in accordance with universal law and universal truth, we need to live our own authentic truth. So when we live into our own unique purpose and reason for being alive without trying to do or be something that we're not, and think back to like our conversation about pay and sati, right? We honor our part in the process of creation. And what we do in our world is like a sign of what transpires at the purest essential spiritual levels. So what we do in our realm affects the upper realms of existence. Through our thoughts, words, and actions, we connect these two worlds. So Tav is all about as above, so below. So you can see how, that circle, it's a gateway letter, the way Het was a gateway letter, taking us to the infinite. Tav is another one of those letters. So here's Het.
Yep.
And you can see how Het, life is a gateway, and Tav, Torah, is a gateway. That's the gist of it. Anybody have anything they want to add?
No, I just want to add what Sharon said about Hebrew and names, that Sharon's name is Shifra, one of her names is Shifra, and Shifra means poet. And Sharon loves poetry. So when your name before you're born, it could be that, Sharon. And it was the most popular name in Israel in 2012, believe it or not, 11 years ago. That's the most popular name for Israelis. And you can tell a lot, Jennifer, I think, from names like Chanoch. I got a Chet at the beginning and a Chet at the end. And my name's Chinuch, is educator. So when I was born,
Interesting.
could have been educator. So I think you can tell a lot about a Jewish name that we don't know why we're giving it, but sometimes you could just live up to the name, right? Sharon, I think you would agree with Shifra on that count, right?
Right. And my first name is Sarah, so there's actually two shins, both my first and second name. But I really like this Tav, and I like the way that you integrated the dot in the middle of it, as like a cornucopia coming out of the sky and just starting off small and coming larger, larger, larger. Of course, it's perception of the depth of it, but it just really speaks to pulling from God and releasing to all of us here on earth. And the Tav kind of looks like an archway, like a fortress,
right?
Like a protection, so that what comes from God will stay within us.
It's so interesting because I've never thought it so much that way, as I always saw it as the gateway for us to move through the physical, to the spiritual God realm. So thank you, because you just kind of brought it back to the other to the other. You know, it's like the hay where the hand comes down and the hand goes up.
Yeah.
You know, and it is that two-way street, but for some reason in my head, you know, as many times as I've looked at it and drew it, I never really I never made the connection so much that it was all, you know, again, it's that balance, it's both. You know, you saw it as funneling in, and I always just saw it as you know, the pathway out of the physical realm. So
I
thank
think
you.
one of the reasons
well-
that it looks like it's funneling in is the way that you have the 4 lines and you have it
Yeah.
pulling. So
Right,
to
but-
me,
right.
that represents that it's coming in. To me, that's just my
Yeah.
perception.
And for me, those 4 lines were, you know, that point, and then you sort of go through the time warp,
Mhm.
you know, into outer space.
Right. It's like a-
Twilight Zone.
Let's do the time warp again. Sorry.
no, it's really has a lot to it. You can go through all types of meditations just going through that letter, Jennifer, I think.
Yes. So I appreciate that insight very much. And you know, I think that right there is in some ways so much what this is about, is that there are so many ways to go when studying all of this, and it's all interconnected.
That's why it's so important to have a group, because
Right.
everybody is going to look at it and they're going to draw from it different perceptions. And I think I really think this is fascinating. And I've had your book how long now? And I just find this fascinating.
Mhm.
Go
Thank
through each letter.
Well, I think, Jennifer, with your book, it's like there's 2,400,000 ways of interpreting each word of the Torah. I think if,
Right.
like Sharon said about a group, if different people looking at the letter, everyone's looking in their lives in the book at the letters and taking something way differently. Each of us has different life experiences, so we all take away something different from each letter based on our lives.
Exactly.
Not the same. We're all different, yet we're connected, obviously, but everyone looks at your letters and gets a different lesson from it.
Right. You know, and as I said, even if I were to do it now, you know, again, I'm sure I draw different things.
Right.
You
Different
know,
state.
and you know, I still really feel like it's just each one of these is a crystal on a snowflake on the tip of an iceberg. You know, there is so much more than, you know, anything that I've conveyed in the letters. Like what I've conveyed is just such a teeny tiny infinitesimal, you know, spark compared to the depth of what any one letter could possibly mean.
Yet not many people have accomplished what you've done with mandalas of Hebrew letters. Yet you must say it's unique. It's a unique way of pouring the letters, right? How many Jews look at mandalas in Hebrew letters? I mean, not many that I know.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a convergence for me at that time in my life. Yes. So, oh my goodness, I just saw the time. It's 9:21, which means I've gone way over time with you all. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was
Thank
a
you
real
very much.
yeah.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. So
Good job, Jen. Good job.
Thanks. So Ken, I'll try to remember to scan the different Shaviti and send them to you.
Okay.
So if you want to, you know,
Yeah.
use them, cool. And if not, all right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Jen.
Bye.